You're not in your bed anymore. Not exactly. You're standing in the dim, crooked doorway of a medieval tavern. It smells like last week's ale, this week's sweat, and something vaguely alive in the corner. Possibly a rat. Possibly someone's forgotten foot. Outside, the wind howls across the muddy road, dragging the scent of wet hay, dung, and desperation. But in here, the air is thicker, warmer, slightly sour. The candles are stubby and flickering. Their light dances across the walls like drunken ghosts. You blink, trying to adjust to the gloom, and step over something soft. Maybe a sleeping dog. Maybe not. Don't worry. Everyone else has stepped on it too. This is not the kind of tavern where people greet each other with cheerful songs and perfectly poured pints. No one calls out, "Welcome, friend." Instead, they mostly grunt, or snore, or drool quietly onto the bench. You're here now, in the 14th century. You're wearing wool that itches and shoes that squish. You don't know what they've squished, but you suspect it moved. The tavern keeper, a man with 2 teeth and 1 working eye, nods toward the long wooden table. Stained, cracked, and sticky with stories. You sit. The bench rocks beneath you, as if it's had enough of this life too. A man to your left snores into his bowl of something. It might be stew, it might be beer, it might be both. It is mostly beige. Your hands find the table. It's wet, not with water. But let's not think too hard about that. Instead, let's talk about the drink, because that's why you're here, isn't it? To forget that the water outside will kill you, and the water inside might judge you. So, you drink. Ale. Flat, warm and cloudy with floating bits. It's what everyone drinks. Children, monks, kings. Not because they love the taste, but because the alternative is dysentery and death. This ale has been brewed with a sort of careless hope. A handful of barley, some herbs you don't recognise, and a wish that the bacteria drown before you do. It's served in a wooden mug, already worn smooth by mouths that came before yours. Many mouths, some toothless, some possibly contagious. You take a sip. It tastes like wet bread and regret. Still, it warms your stomach, and that counts for something. Especially here, where the nights are long, and the roofs leak, and the fire barely remembers how to burn. Someone belches beside you, loudly, proudly. Across the room, 2 men are arguing in slurred Latin. You understand none of it, but you catch the word pig, and something that might be wife. It ends with laughter, or possibly a threat. The line is thin here. A serving girl weaves between the tables. She's maybe 13, or maybe 40. Time doesn't move in a straight line in places like this. Her dress is patched and stained, and she carries a tray like a battlefield shield. She avoids eye contact, the first rule of surviving a tavern shift. You notice a small bowl of something on the table now. It arrived without you asking. It's grey. It's lumpy. It might be food. You prod it with a wooden spoon. It jiggles. Maybe you're hungry. Maybe you're curious. Maybe both. You taste it. It is complicated. Possibly turnip. Possibly onion. Definitely salt. Enough salt to pickle a fish, which, come to think of it, might be what this is. In the corner, a man plays something resembling music. A stringed instrument barely in tune. His song tells of love lost, and cows found, and a merchant who married a barrel. You can't tell if it's a joke or a tragedy. No one laughs, but no one throws anything either, which means it's going well. You look around. There are no menus, no napkins, no expectations, just people, and noise, and smells. So many smells, and beneath it all the quiet rhythm of survival. This is where peasants come to forget their debts, where knights come to forget their sins, where no one cares who you are, as long as you can pay or fight or disappear quietly when you can't. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters. Inside, a candle sputters out. Darkness swells. The man next to you is now asleep face down in his broth. No one moves to help him. He'll either wake up or drown. Either way, it's none of your business. You take another sip of ale. It's warmer now, or you are. The bench creaks beneath you like an old man with bad knees. The wood whispers stories, of deals made, of love exchanged, of lice shared. It's not a place of beauty, not exactly, but it is a place of honesty. And sometimes that's enough. You lean back, eyes heavy, heart quiet. This is the first night of many. There will be spilled drink and spilled secrets, There will be singing and sobbing and something in between. But for now, you sit in the soft, foul belly of the past and listen to the breathing, to the fire, to the truth that history never tells in books, only in whispers, only in places like this. Now, close your eyes, if you haven't already. The ale has done its work, and the night is long. You're still in the tavern. Of course you are. The wind outside hasn't changed. It still claws at the wooden walls like a starving dog, and the mud on the floor has not dried. Nor will it. You shift slightly on the bench, which groans in protest, and for a moment you wonder if the wood itself is tired of this life too. The table in front of you still shines with a dampness you choose not to investigate. A candle flickers nearby, casting long shadows across your fingers, your bowl, the uneven plank floor. Time stretches in this place, like old cheese or cheap ale. No clocks, no bells, only the slow burn of tallow and the sound of someone coughing in the corner, a wet rattling cough that speaks of many winters and too few herbs. Someone, somewhere, begins to hum. It's not a song you recognize. It's just a sound, low and slow and lost in thought, like the voice of a man who forgot how to hope but remembers how to hum. The ale in your mug has settled. The floating bits have now sunk to the bottom, forming a sort of sedimented mystery. You don't stir it. You just drink what's above, avoiding the past as so many do. A man shuffles by your table, trailing a scent of sweat, garlic, and something slightly singed. His boots squelch with every step. You look down. Yes, the floor is wet again, or still. The tavern dog, or perhaps a very large rat, trots across the room with something in its mouth. It might be bread. It might be someone's toe. No one seems concerned. Behind the bar, the tavern keeper scratches at something beneath his tunic and spits into a bucket. It makes a sound like history being discarded. You watch him for a moment. His hands are thick. His face is a story told in scars and stubble. His one good eye watches everything and nothing. He knows who stole the bread, who owes money, who cried quietly into their ale last Tuesday, but he says nothing, just scratches and spits and watches. The walls of the tavern are not straight. They lean slightly inward, like they are trying to hear the gossip too. Above you the beams are thick with soot. Smoke clings to everything. The ceiling, the curtains, your skin. Your lungs have already given up resisting. You cough once, gently, and feel the dust of centuries settle deeper. Across the room, two women argue, not loudly, just firmly. One has a blackened eye. The other holds a ladle like a weapon. Their words are sharp, but their tone is tired. This is not their first argument, and it will not be their last. You listen without listening. The words drift past you like smoke, acrid, familiar, and impossible to catch. Your stomach makes a sound. It's not hunger exactly, more of a complaint. You stare down at your bowl. The stew has changed colour, or maybe your eyes have. You poke it again with your spoon. It resists. You respect that. A boy runs past your table, barefoot, wild-haired, and carrying a chicken under one arm. He's chased by a man who may or may not be his father. Neither of them is winning. The chicken, however, looks smug. It clucks once, in defiance, and disappears out the door. The door slams. The wind howls its approval. You reach for your mug again. The ale is nearly gone. What's left is thick, bitter, and entirely committed to being unpleasant. You drink it anyway, because that's what people do here. They drink what's handed to them, and they call it a blessing, or a punishment, depending on the day. Outside, someone is singing, or screaming. It's hard to tell. You glance toward the window. The glass is too cloudy to see through, or maybe it's not glass at all, just oiled cloth, stretched thin by time. Either way, the world beyond this tavern is no clearer than the world within it. The man beside you shifts in his sleep. He murmurs something in a language you don't know. He could be praying, or swearing, or dreaming of stew that doesn't jiggle. The fire in the hearth crackles, barely. It is tired too. Burning wood here is a luxury, not a right. Most fires are built on peat, dung, or hope. The warmth is minimal, the smoke is generous. You lean back against the wall, feeling the uneven texture of plaster, brick, and possibly mildew. A spider watches you from the ceiling. You nod. It does not nod back. And still, the tavern breathes. It is alive in its own way. Not with joy, but with endurance. The kind of life that survives plagues, kings, and taxes. The kind of life that knows the value of soup and silence. You close your eyes, just for a moment. The sounds blur. The air thickens. The world slows. And somewhere, just beyond the edge of sleep, you hear it. The steady, stubborn heartbeat of history. Still thumping, still drinking, still here. You haven't moved much, but time has. Or maybe it hasn't. In a medieval tavern, time isn't something you follow. It's something that happens to you, like rain, or taxes, or the feeling of something crawling across your foot under the table. You decide not to look. That's the second rule of surviving a tavern night. Don't ask questions your nose or toes already answered. A man limps past you now, muttering to himself and clutching a tankard the size of his head. His face is a collapsed map. Lines folding in on themselves, eyes like dried raisins, and a mouth permanently pursed as if the ale betrayed him decades ago, and he never quite forgave it. He sits, he sighs, he stares at the wall like it owes him money. A bowl clinks, a rat squeaks, a child coughs, high and thin, like it's been coughing since it was born and just never stopped. Somewhere, a stool collapses under the weight of bad decisions and there's laughter. Not joyful laughter, tavern laughter, the kind that doesn't rise higher than the throat, the kind that dies before it becomes feeling. You breathe in through your nose. It was a mistake. The air is thick with a stew of smells that have long since merged into one confused odour. Ale, smoke, sweat, boiled cabbage, leather, unwashed hair, and possibly cheese, though you see no cheese. You exhale slowly, and the taste lingers on your tongue. This, you realise, is the scent of memory. No historian has written it down, no museum has bottled it, but here it is, in your lungs, telling you more about the 14th century than any scroll ever could. A fire pops behind you, a small spark leaps onto the floor. No one moves. Fires happen. So do burns, and if it gets worse, someone will probably shout. Until then, it's not your concern. You glance toward the bar again. The tavern keeper has fallen asleep standing up. His chin rests on his chest, and his hand still clutches a half-sliced turnip. You wonder how long he's been like that. You wonder if he ever stops. A woman stumbles in from the street. Mud cakes her hem, and her eyes are wild with something. Grief, maybe. Or gin. She carries a bundle that might be bread, or a child, or laundry. No one asks. She mutters something in a dialect too old to translate and shuffles toward the back, disappearing behind a sagging curtain that leads to nowhere in particular. You imagine a room filled with more smoke, less hope, and a mattress that creaks in languages long forgotten. Someone beside you sneezes. It's wet and enthusiastic. You flinch. The sneezer looks proud. No handkerchiefs here. Just sleeves. And blessings. Not that anyone says, "Bless you." There's no time. There's barely breath. You look down again at your hands. Your fingernails are darker than you remember. Dirt? Probably. Disease? Possibly. Destiny? Unclear. You rub them against the rough fabric of your tunic, but it only smears. Hygiene in this age is more of a theory than a practice. Baths are rare, water is suspicious, and soap is considered an extravagance. Or witchcraft. You sip the last of your ale. It no longer tastes like ale. It tastes like wood, and silence, and maybe moss. You try not to think about how many mouths this cup has known. You try not to think about much at all. That's how people survived back then, selective memory, strategic forgetfulness. You feel it growing inside you already. The music starts again. Or perhaps it never stopped. A fiddler plucks at his strings, fingers blackened with soot, and plays a melody that loops endlessly, like a thought you can't shake. It's not cheerful, it's not sad. It simply exists, like the rats, like the smoke, like the idea that tomorrow might be colder than today, and you'll still be here, wondering whether the stew will ever taste like anything but boiled history. Your eyes close for a moment, and in that moment the tavern breathes again. The people shift, like waves in a sea of cloth and coughs. The candles lean, the shadows sway, and you, tucked between the ale and the ash, feel something you didn't expect. A kind of peace. Not joy, not comfort, but the peace that comes from knowing nothing more is expected of you tonight. No work, no battles, no grand speeches, just warmth and a wall at your back and a bowl of something that might have once been food. The world shrinks to the radius of your candle. Everything else fades, even your name, because here, in this crooked little tavern on the edge of time, names matter less than silence, less than stew, less than the knowledge that you're not alone in your discomfort. And for tonight, that is enough. You're still here, in the crooked wooden womb of the medieval tavern, where the world seems to exhale itself into the rafters and settle like dust on every surface and soul. The candle flickers with less certainty now, its wick a little shorter, its flame a little more nervous, and as you watch it sway, you find yourself swaying too, not from drink, not yet, but from the rhythm of the place, the slow ebb and flow of breath and boredom and bodies that have nowhere better to be. You can't see the stars outside. They're smothered by smoke and mist and the thick thatch of a roof that sighs in the wind like an old woman remembering her youth. But you feel their absence, the way the night presses inward, like it wants to get warm too. Someone is singing again, or maybe moaning, or maybe both. A sound that travels through the tavern like a tired ghost unsure of its purpose, lingering near the hearth, curling around boots and knees until it fades into the floorboards and joins the others already buried there. The table before you is sticky, still, and you can't help but wonder how many secrets it has absorbed, how many fists have slammed upon it, how many confessions whispered, how many tears soaked in and forgotten like rain on old wood. Your legs have gone numb, your shoulders ache, but there's no reason to stand. No one is waiting for you. The door, warped by years and swollen with damp, is shut, and outside is nothing but cold and consequence. Inside is warmer, not warm, just warmer. And that's all the difference you need. A jug is passed. A hand, cracked, red, and missing a thumb, offers you another drink. You nod. You do not ask what it is. You do not ask where it came from. You drink. It is bitter, thick, and tastes like wood smoke and something herbal, but not in a pleasant way. More like a punishment brewed by someone who hates you mildly, but not enough to kill you outright. Your throat burns, then cools, then itches. You cough once. Someone nearby chuckles. They've seen this before. They'll see it again. And so will you, because this is what taverns are for. Not for joy, not for dancing, not even for drinking really, but for waiting. Waiting for the storm to pass. Waiting for your luck to turn. Waiting for something you don't remember wanting. The man to your left snores again, louder this time, and his breath smells of onions, desperation, and dreams that never made it past the market square. A child scampers across the floor, barefoot, eyes wide, hair tangled like seaweed, holding a crust of bread like it's gold. You watch her disappear into the shadows behind the stairs, where the drunk and the dying sometimes curl up to sleep, or forget, or vanish. You wonder where she came from. You wonder who she will become. Then you stop wondering, because wondering is a luxury, and tonight there are none. Your eyes drift again to the fire. It's still trying, still fighting against the wet logs and the lazy wind sneaking through the cracks in the wall. Its glow is weak, but it moves, and so you keep watching, because watching something struggle and survive makes you feel less alone. A drop of something lands on your sleeve. You look up. The ceiling drips, not quickly, just persistently, like it knows you're here and wants you to remember that time leaks too. Everything leaks in this place. Roofs, mugs, stories, people. The ale drips from mouths. The truth drips from eyes. The past drips from the air itself, thick and sticky and heavy with things you didn't ask to know. The tavern does not judge. It does not care. It holds you as it holds everyone, slumped, cracked, soaked in the same slow decay. And yet, strangely, there's comfort in that. You are part of something grim, something unspoken, something older than the fire, the drink, the stew. You are part of the night now, and the tavern is part of you, and together you are held in this strange, smoky pause in time, where nothing is asked of you except to breathe and stay, just a little longer. You do not know how late it is, or how early. The concept of time has softened, like bread left too long in a bowl of thin soup. There are no clocks here, no bells tolling gently in the distance. The only rhythm is the slow creak of beams above you, the intermittent coughs of the nearly living, and the occasional slosh of liquid in a wooden cup. You sit still because moving would mean waking something up. Your legs, the ache in your shoulders, or worse, the outside world. You've become part of the tavern now, absorbed into its smell and shadow. The table, still sticky, accepts the weight of your arms without question. The candle before you burns shorter, but no one replaces it. Candles are expensive. Darkness is free. And besides, everyone here knows how to see in the dark, not with their eyes, but with their ears, their noses, their memories. The tavern hums gently, like a beast that hasn't yet decided whether to sleep or bite. The man across from you is staring into space, or perhaps into the past. His lips move slowly, whispering something to someone who isn't there. You do not interrupt. In this place you let people talk to ghosts. The floor beneath your feet is a landscape of stains, straw, and discarded intentions. You shift your boot slightly and something crunches. You do not want to know what it was. The air is growing thicker, not colder, just denser. It's as if the tavern is exhaling its stories in long, slow breaths and they're coiling around you like smoke. You inhale and taste them. Secrets, lies, maybe a little hope, but mostly sweat. The girl with the tray passes you again. Her eyes are glassy from lack of sleep and her hands tremble under the weight of 2 mugs that slosh dangerously with something dark and unpleasant. She spills a little as she walks. No one complains. Everyone spills here. Time, drink, dignity. The liquid hits the floor and vanishes into the already damp wood, like it was never meant to exist at all. Behind the bar, the tavern keeper has returned from wherever sleep carried him. He scratches his beard with a groan and resumes slicing something. Maybe bread, maybe mould pretending to be bread. His knife is dull, his hands are steady. You can hear each slice slow and resistant, like the loaf is fighting back. He wins eventually, and the pieces are tossed onto a plate with the enthusiasm of a man who stopped tasting his own food decades ago. A patron grunts a thank you, or a curse. The difference is small and unimportant. Someone near the fireplace drops a spoon. It clatters, then disappears into the straw. They don't bother retrieving it. Another will come. Or not. Eating with your hands is always an option. Hygiene is theoretical here, like justice, or soup with flavour. Your mug is empty again. Or maybe it's the same mug you've had all night, now finally abandoned by its ale. You run your fingers along its rim, feeling the grooves worn into the wood by centuries of desperate mouths. Each groove, a story. Each chip, a memory. Somewhere a cat yowls, or maybe it's a baby. You're not sure. Both sound equally annoyed by existence. The noise comes from upstairs, a place where the rooms are rented by the hour or the argument or the silence. You imagine the beds up there are thin, lumpy, and filled with more than just straw, but they are dry, and they are private, and that's enough for some. The fire is dying again. Its light sputters weakly, like a drunk trying to stand. The smoke curls lazily upward, and then spreads across the ceiling like a fog that's given up. The few remaining embers glow like ancient eyes, half-lidded and unimpressed. You watch them because they are alive, and here, anything alive is worth watching. A man stumbles past, bumping into your table. He mutters an apology without stopping. He's holding his side like it hurts, but not enough to matter. Pain is a companion in places like this. Not a surprise, just a reminder. He sits on the floor with a sigh and begins humming tunelessly to himself. He might be crying or laughing. It's hard to tell. The tavern dog returns, this time with something clearly not food in its mouth. A shoe, or what used to be one. It drops it near your foot and stares at you, expectant. You nod. It nods back. Agreement reached. A woman to your right is braiding her hair with fingers that look like roots. Twisted, dirt-caked, but careful. Her lips move as she works. Maybe a prayer, maybe a curse, maybe both. She glances up, meets your eyes, and then looks away. That's all the conversation either of you need. A draft curls in from beneath the door, wrapping itself around your ankles like an unwelcome memory. The door rattles slightly in its frame, but doesn't open. No one new enters. No one ever really leaves. Outside, the wind is still angry, still full of rain and gossip. Inside, the air holds its breath. The tavern waits. You lean back against the wall again, letting your head rest on the cold wood. Your eyes begin to close, but not from tiredness, from surrender. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to be. You have arrived at the heart of stillness, in a world that no longer needs you to speak or move or matter. And in that surrender, in that quiet collapse of modern expectations, you find something close to peace. Not the shining, clean kind sold in poems, but the worn, soot-stained kind that taverns offer. Peace that smells of smoke and boiled onions. Peace that hums in your bones like a lullaby sung by someone with no teeth. You breathe in once more, slowly. The air is heavy. The silence is soft. And your mind drifts, not to dreams, but to the warmth of forgetting. Here, in this room full of strangers and stains and stories half told, you're safe in the way only the utterly forgotten can be. You're still exactly where you were, but the tavern has shifted, not in space, not even in structure. Its sagging beams and stubborn walls remain in their rightful tilt and tremble, but in feel, in mood, in the weight of silence that now presses heavier against your shoulders. It's quieter than before, though not entirely quiet, the kind of quiet that hovers just above snoring and beneath regret. The fire has died down to a whisper. It no longer speaks in crackles, only in the occasional pop, like a memory trying to surface. Around you, the patrons have become stiller, heavier in their chairs or on the floor, or draped across benches like forgotten coats. One man lies on a table, his boots still on, one arm trailing to the floor as if reaching for something lost or spilled. Perhaps both. Another has fashioned a pillow out of his own cloak and snores like someone sawing wood in a dream. You sit among them, part of the silent wreckage of a long and mostly uneventful night. Your hands are dry now, crusted faintly with whatever was in that last drink, and your mouth tastes faintly of metal, or mould, or melancholy. You try to remember your name again, not because you've forgotten it, but because it seems irrelevant now, a detail misplaced in the dust. What matters here is not who you are, but how long you can endure the slowness of everything. And you're enduring quite well. You shift slightly, pressing your spine into the wooden wall behind you. It is unforgiving, like a priest, like a tax collector, like a mother who's seen it all. You close your eyes just long enough to feel the flicker of nothingness start to pull at your mind, but the shrill creak of a stool nearby startles it away. You look, slowly, and see an old woman settling herself down with the same determination one might use to saddle a stubborn mule. She groans, adjusts her shawl and begins to peel an onion. Not eat it, just peel it, layer by layer. The scent escapes, sharp and rude, slicing through the fog of stale ale and feet like a dagger of honesty. No one complains. Onions are medicine, onions are food, onions are protection against plague, against witches, against the bitter truths of an early morning in a place like this. She does not look up. She peels with the seriousness of someone who knows that everything in life, even tears, must be prepared by hand. A boy sneezes somewhere behind you, violently, repeatedly, with the enthusiasm of someone young enough to believe sneezing is a skill. His mother, or the woman pretending to be one, hushes him by smacking his shoulder and muttering something about demons. You can't tell if it's a joke. You're not sure she knows either. Superstition hangs heavy in places like this, thick as smoke, shared as casually as mugs. A black cat wanders in through a crack in the door and weaves between the legs of the snoring man, pausing to sniff at the spilled stew before deciding it has better options elsewhere. It vanishes again, without fanfare, like all wise things. A man begins to mutter in his sleep near the hearth. His voice is low, steady, rhythmic, almost a prayer, or a curse disguised as one. He says the same word 3 times, then silence, then a hiccup, then nothing. You imagine his dreams, fields of wheat or flames or debts unpaid. Dreams in this place are not to be trusted. They ferment like the ale, bubbling with memories that have spoiled but won't quite rot. You glance around and realize that you are now one of the most awake people in the room. It's not a comfortable realization. Wakefulness feels vulgar here, like laughing at a funeral or wearing clean clothes to a plague pit. You lower your gaze, trying not to intrude on the dreams around you. Your feet ache. They haven't moved, but they still ache, as if they too are remembering journeys they never took. You slide them beneath your bench, brushing against something soft and furred. Not a rat, not quite, something in between. It doesn't bite. It simply accepts your presence, then shuffles away with the offended dignity of something used to being misunderstood. You wonder briefly about disease, but only briefly. In this century, death is never more than a few feet away, behind the bar, under the straw, in the cough of the man in the corner. You make peace with it in the same way one accepts bad stew, slowly, without complaint, and with the mild hope that it will spare you for another hour. The candle before you finally dies. A sigh of smoke curls upward, then disappears. You're not left in complete darkness. A few embers still glow, and the moon presses faintly against the cloth-covered windows like a ghost wanting in. But the room is mostly shadows now, soft and vast. You can hear your breath. You can hear the walls settling. You can hear faintly the tavern breathing, a slow, collective inhalation of wood and wool and human exhaustion. You're wrapped in it now, not a blanket, a feeling, a shared silence, a quiet understanding that, for tonight, this place is sanctuary. Not safety, that's too generous, but sanctuary. A pause in the long sentence of survival, a comma, not a full stop. You let your head tilt back. The ache in your neck arrives immediately, but you welcome it. At least it's honest. So little here is. You listen to the wind pressing against the door, to the faint trickle of water from somewhere unseen, to the distant bark of a dog, or a man pretending to be one. You do not smile, but your face softens. The absurdity of it all is no longer something to resist. It is something to admire, gently, like bad embroidery or an ambitious pigeon. The absurdity is history. The absurdity is truth. And as your eyes close, not in sleep but in surrender, you realize that the tavern has given you what you came for, though you never asked. A place to be still, to vanish without leaving, to forget without loss. Around you, the snoring deepens. The shadows stretch. The onion woman finishes peeling and drops the last skin into her lap, satisfied. The tavern is not dead. It is merely dreaming. And so are you. You wake, if this can be called waking, not with a start or a gasp or any sort of decisive return to the world, but with the slow realization that your eyes are open again and your thoughts have begun to trickle back into your skull like molasses seeping into a cracked bowl. The tavern hasn't changed, not in any measurable way. The same damp wood groans faintly around you, the same sour smell of boiled root vegetables and breath warmed over bad teeth still hangs in the air, and the fire has not miraculously revived itself. It has only slumped deeper into its bed of ash, like a child pretending to sleep so the chores will pass it by. You lift your head an inch and immediately regret it. Something in your neck protests, and your spine joins in. But nothing sharp, nothing urgent, just the slow complaint of a body that knows it is old, even if your mind insists otherwise. The man who was snoring earlier is now silent. You glance over. He might be dead, or sleeping with the conviction of someone who has absolutely nothing left to lose. Either way, it seems impolite to check. Around you, the others are statues, arranged in poses of defeat and semi-conscious rest. Heads on tables, arms as pillows, backs curled like commas, each one telling a story of something once hoped for and long since postponed. A new sound enters now, a soft rhythmic swish, like wet cloth being wrung out slowly over stone. You tilt your head, tracking it, and find its source in the corner. The tavern girl, the one with the tired eyes and the permanently damp apron, is wiping a table. Not your table, not yet. With a rag that once may have been white, now coloured the shade of decisionless brown that only medieval things can manage. She moves with the weariness of someone doing something not because it matters, but because it has always been done. Cleanliness here is not the pursuit of hygiene, but of habit. The rag simply spreads the wetness more evenly across the wood, as if giving it a second skin. Still she does it, because some things must be done, even when they don't do anything. You watch her and realise that this is how time moves here. Not forward, but in circles, like a millstone grinding down grain that no one will ever eat. Her movements are a lullaby, and they almost send you drifting again, but something shifts. The door creaks, just once. Not enough to open, just enough to remind everyone it's still there, still closed, still stubborn, still holding back the rest of the world. You glance toward it. Nothing. No shadow, no wind, no visitor. Just the threat of change, and then its retreat. The tavern exhales again, collectively, a breath that no one realizes they were holding. You begin to feel it in your bones. This building is not just shelter, it's a container. For people, for moments, for all the things too soft to survive in daylight. A man near the back wall shifts in his sleep, murmuring something like a name, or maybe a warning. It fades before it reaches you. You let it go. A jug clinks. A cat jumps from the windowsill to the bench and then to the floor, where it pauses, grooms one paw with delicate disdain, then struts through the wreckage of boots and bowls and dreams. It disappears under a table without ceremony. Everything here moves without need for permission. Even the shadows, especially the shadows. They stretch and sway like drunken priests, trailing behind the legs of chairs and curling up beside snoring mouths. You stare at one for a while, and it stares back. You're not sure whose it is. Perhaps it's yours. Perhaps it belonged to someone long gone and simply never left. Some shadows, you sense, are loyal like that. You notice your hands again, resting limp on the table, palms up as if waiting for rain. They're dirtier now, or maybe just more honest. You see the little cracks near your knuckles, the way your nails seem more jagged than you remember. A splinter is lodged in one thumb. You consider removing it, then decide against it. The pain is minor, and in this place, minor pain is comforting. It means you're still involved, still participating, still here. You stretch your fingers and they crack one by one, like twigs snapping in the forest of your stillness. Somewhere nearby, someone begins to whistle. A simple tune, childlike, off-key. It floats through the room like a leaf caught in a draught, touching ears that don't react, brushing across the edge of your mind before drifting on. It is not a happy sound. It is not a sad one. It simply exists, like the stains on the walls or the creak in your knee. Things that have outlived their purpose and now remain out of habit. You wonder who's doing it, but you don't turn around. In this place, you let sounds be sounds. You let people be mysteries. You let the air hold its secrets without pressing too hard. The tavern girl has finished wiping the table. She sits now on the edge of a stool with one leg shorter than the others. She pulls her knees up, rests her chin on them, and stares at the dying fire. Her eyes are still open, but they're not looking. They're remembering, or forgetting, or both. You think she might be 16, or 60. In this light, under this roof, age is measured not in years, but in size, in scars, in the tilt of one's shoulders when no one is asking questions. You think she might be beautiful, but beauty is a luxury, and here, everything costs more than it's worth. You close your eyes again, just for a moment. The stool beneath you sighs. Your spine folds into the shape of surrender. You let go of your name once more. You let go of the thought that you ever had a purpose outside this moment. The tavern is your world now, its slow breath, its aching wood, its quiet gravity. You belong to it, and it to you. The outside world tries again. A breeze seeps in through the cracks in the wood, not forcefully, but like an old friend testing the mood of a silent room. It's not cold exactly, not warm either, just present. The kind of presence that lingers near the edge of your neck, like someone standing behind you who won't speak. It smells of wet leaves, old hay, and chimney soot. Reminders that seasons are changing, though inside this tavern, time drips like candle wax, without pace or urgency. The breeze brushes past your ear, circles the room once like a curious ghost, and disappears into the rafters. You hear nothing follow, no voice, no footsteps, just the silence growing thicker in its absence. Across the room, a man lifts his head, barely, and rubs his eyes as though he's just woken up from a century of disappointment. He sniffs once, shrugs, and lets his head fall back down. The tavern doesn't mind. It has held heavier heads. You stay where you are. You're learning the rhythm now, not the rhythm of music. There is no music here, not tonight, but of stillness, of the delicate balance between staying alert enough to notice the room and relaxed enough to become part of it. You're no longer simply sitting in a medieval tavern. You're being absorbed by it. You're the slouch in your shoulders, the grain of the wood beneath your palm, the slight tilt of your bench, the dust trapped in the corners of the air. You belong to the slowness now. You have made peace with the discomfort, the itch on your ankle, the cramp in your back, the taste of someone else's dream on the rim of your cup. You do not seek comfort here. You are not owed it, and you no longer expect it. This is not a place for peace, but it is a place for forgetting. Somewhere above you, a floorboard groans. Then another. Someone is awake upstairs. A few breaths. A cough. A moment of quiet debate. Then the unmistakable creak of a chamber pot being moved. You imagine the scene. A crooked room with a low ceiling, two people not speaking, one of them staring at the wall as if it might apologize. Maybe there was love up there once, or a transaction, or both. But now, just tired bodies and the need to relieve them. The tavern hears it all, remembers none of it. You return your gaze to the fire, which is no longer a fire, just a faint suggestion of heat trapped in orange coals. They blink at you lazily, then close their eyes. To your left, a large man shifts in his sleep. His hand slides off the table and lands on the floor with a wet slap. You do not check what he landed in. A rat scurries by a moment later, bold, determined, and unbothered by anything resembling personal space. It pauses by your boot, twitches its nose twice, and moves on. You almost envy it. Purposeful, swift, unconcerned by questions of dignity or reputation. It is probably better fed than most of the people in this room. You imagine it has a name, a family, perhaps even a secret passage into the cellar. You smile briefly, but only inside. A man begins to sing. Just a little. One phrase, over and over again, in a language you do not know. Or perhaps a melody with no language at all. The sound is cracked, faint, and almost apologetic. He doesn't raise his voice. He's not performing. He's remembering, or maybe hallucinating. You let it wash over you like smoke, thin and oddly comforting. It makes no sense, but it belongs. Everything here belongs, no matter how broken. That is the tavern's gift, the power to hold what the world discards. The tavern keeper appears again. You're not sure from where. Perhaps he has a cupboard beneath the floor where he folds himself up between moments. He walks slowly now, with the limp of someone who stopped caring about the cause. His eyes scan the room, not urgently. More like a shepherd counting sheep who have long since stopped following instructions. He mutters to himself as he picks up an overturned bowl, stares at it for a second, and sets it right again. There is no point to the gesture. But in this place, actions aren't measured by their usefulness. They're measured by their repetition. He straightens a bench, pushes a stool, picks up a knife from the floor and wipes it on his shirt, which makes it, by medieval standards, cleaner. He nods once at the room, satisfied that it continues to exist, and disappears again. You take a breath, a long, deliberate one. The air tastes like wood and wool and water that waited too long in the bucket. You hold it in your lungs. Let it sit there. Let it become part of you. You wonder what time it is. Not in numbers, but in feelings. Is it the time before breakfast? Or the hour just after despair? Does it matter? You're not expected anywhere. No one is waiting for you to arrive or return or explain yourself. You have no role here, and yet you're not invisible. You're seen simply by being, and in this odd, slow, dripping world, that is a kind of grace. Someone coughs, then again, and the room responds with a kind of collective shift, not of alarm, but recognition. The cougher is known, his rhythm is familiar, there is nothing new in it, no plague here, just lungs doing what lungs do after years of smoke and wet straw and arguments about nothing. The cough fades, the silence resumes. You close your eyes again, not to sleep, just to listen better. The bench beneath you groans. A spoon clatters somewhere in the dark. A drop of something leaks from the ceiling, water, hopefully, and hits the floor with a delicate tap. You hear a whisper, not directed at anyone, and a faint rustle of hay as someone shifts their weight. All of it blends into a kind of lullaby, composed not by intention, but by repetition. A lullaby for those who live without promises. You remain still, the tavern breathes around you, and the wind, always waiting, hums a low, tired song against the beams. You don't know how long it's been now. Minutes, hours. A whole medieval night feels like it could stretch out forever, like dough refusing to rise, heavy with the weight of too many yesterdays. But you're still here. The tavern hasn't let go of you yet, and you haven't tried to leave. Perhaps the door is locked, or perhaps you've simply forgotten that doors lead anywhere. You look around again, slow as syrup, and find that the world is still as it was. Not frozen, no, that would be too neat, but softly decaying, like fruit ripening past the point of sweetness into something that smells of both life and surrender. There's a man stirring porridge in a corner. No fire beneath the pot, just the stirring, a rhythm, a ritual. You wonder if it's even his, or if the spoon is his, or the hand. He looks content or confused or possibly both. Behind him someone sits with their face buried in their arms, still silent, as if they are not sleeping, but listening to their own memories with great care. There is a window in this room, small, high up, covered with something that might once have been linen, now more of a philosophy than a fabric. The moonlight presses against it, not quite breaking through, but leaving its suggestion. You can see its shape, like a blurred coin held behind frosted glass, a distant wealth you cannot spend. You stare at it for a while and imagine the world beyond the tavern walls. Mud, fog, a chicken asleep in the wrong place, a dog with one eye and no owner, a cart left abandoned, its wheels slowly surrendering to gravity. Perhaps a stream, trickling politely toward nothing in particular. You think of the stars, far beyond that stubborn window cloth, and realise that they too have seen nights like this. Perhaps every star has its own tavern below, filled with sleepy creatures trying to forget their aches. Perhaps the stars are not judging, only watching, patiently, quietly. Someone farts. It is not a small event. It is not subtle. It echoes a little against the walls and into the straw-stuffed silences. No one laughs. That would be too modern. Here, it is not comedy. It is nature. Just another confession the body makes when no one is listening. The man who did it shifts slightly, adjusts his blanket, which is really just a heavy coat turned inside out, and resumes whatever dream he was living through. The smell when it arrives is not offensive. Not really. Just another layer in the already complex perfume of humanity. You have grown accustomed now to the tavern scent, the wet wood, the dry sweat, the clinging shadow of spilled ale, the unwashed wool, the onion that no longer explains itself. You breathe it all in without question. It is not pleasant, but it is whole. A woman near the door rises, slowly, carefully, like someone who has just remembered gravity and doesn't quite trust it. Her hair is braided poorly, and her feet are wrapped in strips of cloth that used to be something else, a flag, a shirt, a part of someone's curtain. She moves toward the bar. Her steps make no sound. She taps on the wood once, twice, waits. No one answers. She taps again. A moment later, a hand, just a hand, appears from the dark behind the counter and sets down a mug. She picks it up without a word, turns, and returns to her corner, where she sips it slowly, eyes closed, face turned slightly toward the wall. You wonder if the drink tastes like relief, or like memory, or like nothing at all. The coals in the hearth pulse again. A brief red sigh. You find yourself hypnotized by their rhythm. There's no firewood left, not unless someone is willing to tear a chair apart, and even then, there would be questions. Fire is rationed here, not with rules, but with intuition. You don't feed it unless it threatens to die. You let it fade gently and then hope it remembers you kindly. The heat, what remains of it, clings to your ankles, a modest warmth, the kind that says, you will not die tonight, but promises nothing more. You adjust your posture, not for comfort. That illusion left long ago, but for the sake of your spine, which has begun to curve into the shape of the bench. You wonder how many backs this wood has moulded, how many travellers, peasants, dreamers and drunkards it has bent to its will. You're not the first, you will not be the last. The bench is patient, the bench waits for bones. From behind the bar a soft humming starts. You don't know who it is. The tavern keeper perhaps, or someone else who lives in the dark corners where the mugs are cleaned with rags and good intentions. The tune is uneven, gentle, familiar in the way that fog is, shapeless, but known. It floats through the air and gathers in the low beams above as if the building itself is listening. No one joins in, no one claps. This is not a performance. It's a comfort the singer gives to themselves, and the room simply gets to overhear it. You blink slowly. Your fingers are colder now. The warmth has travelled upward, ankles, knees, chest, and left your hands behind. You rub them together. The sound they make is rough, like sandpaper and regret. You're not afraid, not tired, just suspended, like dust in sunlight. There is nothing to do, no decision to make, only to wait, to observe, to let the tavern pass through you like weather. A sudden laugh erupts from the man near the hearth. Just one, sharp, barking sound. Then silence. His eyes are closed. Maybe he laughed at a dream. Maybe he laughed to chase one away. No one asks. The room shifts again, barely. Someone scratches their neck. Someone else adjusts a cup. The cat returns and stares at the same place on the floor it stared at 2 hours ago. You wonder what it sees. You envy its clarity. The night continues. It does not end. It does not begin again. It simply folds itself over and over like a damp cloth, worn thin but never torn. You remain seated. The tavern remains whole. And above it all the moon watches, disinterested but faithful. You've begun to forget what your own voice sounds like. It's not alarming. More like the way you forget the feel of sunlight after too many grey days, or the sound of your mother's footsteps in a long-forgotten hallway. Here, in the tavern, your silence is not empty. It is full. Full of other people's breaths, other people's mutterings, full of chair legs dragging slightly to the left, of spoons dipping lazily into bowls of things that were once vegetables. You have become an ear, a presence, a shape among shapes, and that is enough. No one asks your name. No one offers theirs. Words in this place are not currency. They are burdens, and most of the people here have chosen to travel light. The tavern girl passes again, slowly this time, dragging a stool with her as if it's part of a ritual she performs every evening. She places it near the window, the high one, the moon-shadowed one, and sits with her back straight and her chin tilted just enough to pretend she isn't watching anyone. She doesn't speak, but her silence has a kind of authority to it, like a page in a sacred book you're not allowed to touch. The walls begin to speak now, not in words but in pops and groans and tired creaks. The tavern is settling, or shifting, or remembering. You can never quite tell. It does this every so often, like an old man in his chair adjusting just to prove he's still here. You feel it in your seat, the softest vibration, a kind of ancient exhale travelling through wood and stone and bone. The floor beneath you sighs. The rafters above respond with a moan. It is not haunted, this place. Not in the way stories tell it. No, the ghosts here are quieter. They are not chains and screams. They are unfinished conversations, spilled soup that no one ever cleaned, glances that never found eyes to meet. They are embedded in the grain of the beams, the corners of the bar, the cold imprint on the bench beside you. You feel one brush past your elbow and do not flinch. If anything, it's company. At the far end of the room, two men begin to argue in whispers. It's hard to call it an argument, really. It's more of a disagreement that never intends to end. One man murmuring a phrase, the other muttering a reply, both using the same 6 words in various orders like a chant or a curse or a memory they don't want to share. No one else listens. They've done this before. Every few nights the same topic, the same tone, the same lack of resolution. It doesn't matter what it's about, it only matters that it continues. They are keeping something alive. Not the point of their dispute, but the rhythm of it, the companionship of complaint. You listen for a while, not for content but cadence. Their words become a lullaby of irritation, soft and familiar, and then one of them sighs like a winded bellows and they fall silent again. A cup rolls across the floor, not far, just enough to catch your attention. It wobbles twice before coming to rest against a boot. No one claims it. The boot's owner doesn't move. The cup stays where it is, defeated but dignified. The tavern has its own sense of justice. If an object makes noise, it must sit quietly afterward. If a man disturbs the quiet, he must then fall asleep in his bowl. Balance is maintained. You look down at your own cup. Still there, still half full, or half empty, or completely indifferent. The liquid inside is room temperature, which is to say, it has accepted its fate. You take a sip. It tastes like bread made from regrets and boiled in time. You do not spit it out, you do not savour it, you simply receive it, like all things here. Outside, the wind changes direction. You hear it in the thatch, brushing from a new angle now, as if the sky's turning over in its sleep. The building creaks again, acknowledging the shift. A few flakes of straw drift down from the ceiling. One lands in your lap. You brush it away, or maybe you don't. It doesn't matter. Nothing here is clean. Nothing needs to be. Cleanliness is a kind of forgetting. Here, everything remembers. Every smudge, every stain, every footprint in the mud tracked inside on soles worn thin from walking to nowhere in particular. They all remain. You can feel the memory in the floor beneath your feet. Packed earth pressed down by centuries of tavern shoes, some of them barefoot, some of them borrowed. The floor is not flat. It leans slightly to the left, as if the entire tavern prefers to nap on one side. The fire has gone from embers to glow. You can still see its heart beating under the ash, like something stubborn refusing to be extinguished. One more log would save it. But the wood is gone, or hoarded, or simply not worth the trouble. You feel the loss of the warmth not like cold, but like absence. The kind of absence that presses against your ribs, reminding you of something that used to be kind. You cross your arms, not out of discomfort, but instinct. Your body is remembering how to protect itself from the slow teeth of winter. You welcome the chill like an old adversary who no longer bothers to fight back. Someone begins to snore again, this time softly, a kind of rhythmic wheeze that blends into the furniture. It joins the choir of small sounds, the scratching of the cat, the creaking of chair legs, the occasional drop of water from a beam that leaks even when it hasn't rained. All of it together becomes a kind of music, not one you would dance to, but one that holds you in place, wraps around your ankles, rests on your shoulders like a woolen cloak that no longer itches. You listen, not because you need to, but because there is nothing else to do. Listening is the final act of belonging. You do not know the hour. The sun is gone and the moon is behind something now. A cloud, a thought, a hesitation in the sky. But the tavern continues. Always just a few moments from falling asleep. Always just a few movements away from waking entirely. You sit in the in-between. You're not a visitor anymore. You're part of the furniture. You're the quiet under someone's footstep, the dent in the table, the warmth in the seat that lingers after someone leaves. And when you close your eyes this time, it is not to escape, it is to stay. Your thoughts have softened now, like old bread soaked in broth, losing their corners and dissolving into something warm and shapeless. You're not trying to remember anything anymore. Not your name, not the road you took to get here, not the world beyond the tavern door. Everything outside feels wrapped in fog and moss and the smell of things long buried. You exist only here, in this crooked building with its damp timber bones and its muddy lungs and its patient sagging silence. You've begun to feel affection for its imperfections, the uneven floorboards, the dripping corner, the slouch of the beams as they lean toward each other in weary friendship. You're no longer merely observing the tavern, you're cradled by it, swaddled in its stillness, cupped in its calloused hands. Even the air feels denser now, like it has stories to tell but has made peace with forgetting most of them. The woman with the braid is still sitting on the stool by the window, but she's leaned her head back now, resting it on the frame as though asking the moon to explain itself. Her eyes are closed, or open, or perhaps looking inward, the way people do when they're searching for an answer to a question they haven't fully formed. No one bothers her. She has become part of the architecture, a statue carved from long shifts and longer silences. You wonder what she would say if you asked her what she's waiting for, but you do not ask. Words here are currency in a town that stopped using money. You share presence, not conversation. Glances, not dialogue. The nod of the tavern keeper, the blink of the fire's last coal, the curl of a rat's tail as it vanishes under the bench. These are your companions now. In the far corner, a boy has fallen asleep with his face against the table, arms splayed as though he tried to hug the grain. A puddle of something sits near his mouth. Ull, or broth, or memory. It doesn't matter. It's not his first spill, and it won't be his last. No one cleans it. There are no towels, no napkins, no servants sweeping in with apologies. This is not the kind of place where stains are scolded. Stains are earned. They are records. The floor beneath you has thousands of them, spills that mark old arguments, reconciliations, drunken confessions, and soup too thick to be called food. You begin to feel that your own presence here is forming a mark, some invisible shape in the air, an indentation in the bench, a slight heat where your body meets the dark. Perhaps years from now someone will sit in this same spot and feel a whisper of you. A breeze sneaks in through a crack in the wall, and thin, sharp, smelling faintly of manure and cold bark. You welcome it. It reminds you there's still a world outside, a field perhaps, with frost gathering in the hollow places, a stream whispering secrets to sleeping roots. Somewhere, a barn is collapsing. Somewhere, a lantern is being lit for the wrong reason. But none of that matters here. The breeze comes in like a message that was never meant for you. You accept it anyway. You let it brush your cheek and pass on without protest. A man near the bar sneezes. Not once, but 3 times. No one blesses him. He blesses himself with a grunt and a swipe of his sleeve, and resumes chewing on something that no longer requires teeth. Your foot has gone numb. You move it slightly, and the sensation returns in prickles, tiny stabs of awareness that remind you you're still flesh. You shift your weight, slowly, unwilling to disturb the dreamlike quiet. Your back creaks louder than the tavern walls. You offer a silent apology to the room. It accepts. The bench makes no complaint. It has borne louder burdens. You look around again, eyes heavier now, as though gravity has begun tugging at your lids more insistently. There is nothing new to see. And yet, everything has changed. The angle of a shadow, the depth of a snore, the tilt of the candle flame near the door. The tavern breathes differently now, deeper, slower, as though it too is ready to fall asleep. The door hasn't opened in hours, maybe longer. It has become a painting, a wooden suggestion of escape. No one approaches it, no one dares. Doors are dangerous here. They lead to cold, to work, to the return of thought. Here, inside, you're safe from remembering your obligations, your debts, your name. You're a ghost with warm blood, a pilgrim without pilgrimage, a soul on pause. And in this tavern, being on pause is a kind of holiness. Time drips here, not like rain, but like wax. Thick, slow, certain. You're being sealed in it, moment by moment, and you do not resist. The tavern keeper appears once more. His steps are soft like he's walking through dreams instead of spilled stew. He carries nothing, speaks to no one. He walks to the wall, taps it twice with his knuckle and nods as if answering a question only he can hear. Then he turns, scratches the side of his head, and vanishes behind the bar again. You do not wonder why. You simply record it in your mind's quiet notebook. The tavern keeps its rituals, and you are becoming one of them. You close your eyes for a few seconds, maybe longer. When you open them, the fire is just a breath now, a faint orange pulse in a cradle of ash. Someone is humming again, or maybe it's the wind finding the right angle in the chimney. Either way, it's music, and it's enough. Your body feels heavier now, as if sinking into the wood, becoming part of the furniture. You imagine roots growing from your heels, threading through the bench into the soil below. You're being planted, gently, permanently. The world could end outside, and the tavern would still hold. You reach for your cup again, out of habit more than thirst. It's empty, or nearly so. You tilt it anyway. One drop, like a single memory, rests on your tongue. It tastes like the colour brown, like wood smoke, like endings. You swallow it with gratitude. Someone coughs in the corner. Someone else lets out a long sigh. A dog barks in the distance, muffled and unimpressed. And then, nothing. Just you and the room, and the weight of everything you don't need to say, and so you sit, and the tavern continues, and the night deepens without needing your permission. You're no longer certain if this is still the same night. The tavern makes no effort to inform you. Time here has no courtesy, no announcements, no chimes or bells. It might be the same hour repeating itself like a stubborn verse in a forgotten hymn, or it might be the next day entirely, curled up in the dark and pretending to be yesterday. There are no clocks here, only the slow rhythm of breath and the occasional rise and fall of a snore. You're surrounded by sleepers and half-sleepers, dreamers and those too tired even to imagine. The room is heavier now, not just with bodies, but with the quiet surrender of people who have nothing left to wait for. And yet it is not hopelessness, it is something gentler. Resignation with softness around the edges, a kind of fragile peace made of broth and bare feet, and the unspoken agreement not to ask questions. The candle by the door has given up. Its final waxy sigh remains in a small curved puddle beside its own blackened stump. There is no rush to replace it. Darkness in this place is not an enemy. It is an old companion. You lean back, your spine now familiar with every knot in the bench, and you stare into the dim. Shapes move only when they must. A man shifts, murmurs, scratches his beard. A woman pulls a shawl closer to her shoulders. Somewhere behind the bar a broom falls over. No one startles. Sounds have lost their sharpness. Even gravity behaves with more courtesy here, laying things down gently rather than letting them crash. You begin to forget that once in some other life you hurried, that once you were expected to respond, to speak, to move. Here you are expected only to remain. The air smells of sleep now, not just the sweat and wood smoke of earlier, that still lingers, of course, like the tavern's oldest regular, but something newer, the smell of warm skin in wool, the smell of hands folded under heads, of feet wrapped in old linen, of quiet exhalations into the collar of a shirt worn too many days in a row. It is not a pleasant smell, but it is not unpleasant either. It is truthful, like the scent of someone who has survived another day. You breathe it in and let it fill the hollow spaces in your chest. You're beginning to feel like a piece of furniture that dreams, a bench that remembers it once had legs, and a back, and a voice. In the corner near the hearth that no longer glows, a pair of boots sit side by side, muddy, sagging, forgotten. You wonder about their owner. Perhaps he stepped out to relieve himself and never came back. Perhaps he's sleeping barefoot in the loft, pressed between sacks of barley and ghosts, or perhaps the boots have outlived him. Perhaps they sit now as a memorial, not dramatic or tragic, but simply there, as if to say he was. He stood, he walked, he sat right here, and now he is elsewhere. You stare at them too long, and they begin to look like they might stand up on their own and leave. The wind outside stirs again, a long low whistle that seems to come not from the trees or the road, but from the past, as if the night itself is remembering a story and sighing through it. You listen closely. You hear no words, only the tone, a kind of yearning wrapped in frost, a song for things that were never written down. You wonder how many centuries have passed with this same sound moving through these walls. How many nights like this, with strangers sharing silence, with rats politely waiting for crumbs, with the moon peeking through cracks too thin for comfort. You're not the first. You will not be the last. The tavern is older than your questions. Someone groans, a low, tired sound. Not of pain, but of dissatisfaction. The kind of sound a man makes when his body argues with the cold or with his dreams. You glance toward the noise, but the figure remains curled in shadow, unbothered by your gaze. He returns to his quiet, and so do you. Your fingers rest on the table now. The wood is warm in some places, cold in others. You trace its imperfections with slow movements. A nick from a knife, a burn from a candle, a stain that might have been wine or blood or something in between. The table is a map, and each scar is a town, a night, a moment someone once cared about deeply, and then forgot. You do not feel hungry, you do not feel full. The body has begun to let go of its demands. It no longer expects nourishment or relief. It simply waits, calmly, wrapped in its own small warmth. Your feet are sore, but the soreness is ancient now, as if passed down to you by others who sat here before. You wonder if they thought the same thoughts, if they stared at the same crooked beams, if they blinked into the same blur of candlelight, if they imagined the same stories from the shifting shapes in the rafters. Perhaps this is what the tavern does. It lends you its memory until yours becomes unnecessary. A fly buzzes near your ear, then decides better and disappears into the dark. Even the flies here are considerate, or perhaps sleepy. You wonder if they dream too, if their tiny wings twitch in sleep. The idea makes you smile faintly, and then the smile fades, not because it wasn't real, but because nothing here stays for long, not even emotion. Feelings pass like weather. They visit, rain a little, then leave you damp and blinking. You close your eyes again, not to sleep, not yet. but to listen better. Without sight, the tavern becomes even more alive. You hear the crack of someone's knuckles, the rustle of straw as a head turns. The dripping near the hearth resumes, a slow, deliberate rhythm like time itself leaking into a bucket. Somewhere, a chair shifts. Someone mutters in Latin, or something that sounds like Latin, but is probably just the language of dreams. You feel the whole building breathing, and you breathe with it. You open your eyes once more, not knowing why. Perhaps out of habit, or perhaps to confirm the world is still here. It is. The same dim room, the same half-lit faces, the same loyal shadow under the stool by the window. And now you feel a kind of gratitude. Not loud or grand, but quiet and steady and heavy as bread. Gratitude that you are here, that the tavern exists, that the bench has room for you, that the walls have not yet fallen. You do not know what time it is, but you know that you belong to it, and so you stay, and the tavern hums, and the world outside continues to wait. There's something strange about the way your limbs have begun to forget themselves. Not numb exactly, and not quite sore, but quiet, as if your knees and shoulders and fingers have stopped performing for you and are now simply existing on their own terms. Your hands rest where they landed some time ago, open and relaxed, like they've decided to trust the world not to ask anything more of them tonight. Your feet, once full of travel and aches, now feel like they've merged with the uneven floor beneath you, like the bones have grown soft and are slowly sinking into the packed earth. It feels right. Everything here slows down, dissolves, blends. You're not a person in a place. You're part of the place itself. A worn spot in the bench, a faint warmth on the table, a silence between other silences, and no one minds. In fact, if the tavern had thoughts, it might be pleased. Pleased that another weary soul has folded into its dark corners and let go of needing anything more than stillness. Somewhere near the hearth, someone breathes too loudly, not enough to be rude, but just enough to be known. It's a kind of wet breathing, like a dog dreaming or a man whose nose has forgotten how to cooperate. No one complains. Everyone here knows that breathing itself is a kind of rebellion. You inhale, slowly. Shallow at first, then deeper, letting the air touch places inside you that you haven't felt all day. It smells of damp wool and ash and a faint sour memory of cabbage, but not in a way that offends. It's comforting now, in the way an old cellar comforts. The smell of things left alone, of things that once mattered and now only quietly decay, unbothered by urgency. The body adapts. You no longer crave fresh air. You no longer miss it. You begin to wonder if, perhaps, you were never meant to live in the fresh air anyway. There's a noise near the window. Not the woman, she hasn't moved, but something else. A creak, a shift, a scratch. You tilt your head slightly as if that might make your ears more truthful. It's a rat. Or at least, it should be. You don't see it. But you know. The sound is unmistakable. The careful scurry of tiny feet. The practiced hush of survival. Rats don't bother you anymore. They're the quiet hosts of this tavern. They move like shadows with a mission, never in a hurry but always with intent. They live beneath the floorboards, in the walls, behind the barrels and between the cracks. They feast on things no one else wants. Crumbs, drops, forgotten bones. You almost admire them. They're never loud, never wasteful, never drunk, and they never leave. You hear another rat, or maybe the same one. It scampers, pauses, waits, then disappears again into the unseen. You think about how many rats you've shared this room with tonight. 12? 24? You will never know. And that's fine. Here, in this place, ignorance is not only allowed, it is a kindness. The tavern doesn't want you to know too much. It only wants you to stay, to sit, to soften, to forget just enough. Your eyes drift again toward the beams above, crooked, thick, dust-lined. They hold up more than the roof. They hold memory, scratches from the past, rusted nails left behind by someone too tired to finish a repair, a rope mark perhaps from a time when someone tried to hang something or someone and thought better of it. The wood is older than any story in the room, older than the floor, older than your thoughts, and yet it creaks just like everything else, reminding you it is still here, still bearing the weight, still deciding to hold on. There's a sound at the door, not a knock and not an entrance, just the door itself, breathing. The wind nudges it gently, like a child pushing on a sleeping parent. The hinges groan in response, not ready to wake. The latch holds firm. No one rises to check. There's nothing out there that matters more than the warmth in here. The outside world is something that happens to other people. Farmers with frozen fingers, bakers loading their ovens in the dark, watchmen pacing city walls. That is not your world anymore. You've retired from the urgency of daylight. You've resigned from the tyranny of purpose. You're something else now, something quieter. Someone near you shifts in their seat. Their cloak falls open, revealing a boot wrapped in twine. The foot twitches once, then stills. You wonder what kind of day led them here, how far they walked, what they left behind. But you do not ask. You never ask. That's the rule here. Everyone carries something they will never name, a broken promise, a small betrayal, a hunger that never found its answer. But here, in the tavern, the burden is shared not through speech but through stillness. Through the way one leans against a post, the way someone sighs after every third breath, the way you let your own sorrow dissolve into the wood grain and become anonymous. The ceiling drips again, a slow, rhythmic tap, 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 like a blind man's cane on a cobbled street. You find it soothing. The building is leaking, yes, but it's doing so with intention. Every drip falls exactly where it should, into the hollow of a cracked bowl, abandoned hours ago. You watch it fill, slowly, patiently. No one empties it. Perhaps when it overflows, someone will notice. Or perhaps not. Perhaps it has overflowed dozens of times before and simply kept going. That's the kind of place this is. Nothing ends. It only spills into something else. You look back down at your hands. They haven't moved. The fingers still rest like fallen branches on the table. Your nails are dirty now. Were they always? Maybe. You don't care. The tavern accepts dirt, welcomes it even. Clean hands are for liars and lords. Here, filth is honest. You earned this grime. The road gave it to you. The cup stained your thumb. The bread crust darkened your palm. It's proof you were here, that you touched the world and it touched you back. The fire has given up entirely. Not even a glow now. Just cold ash, soft as memory. You wonder if someone will relight it in the morning. You wonder if morning still comes to this place. You feel a deep pull behind your eyes, not just tiredness, something deeper, a quiet calling, as if sleep itself has taken a seat beside you, placed a hand gently on your shoulder and said, "Enough now," and you agree. You let your head tilt forward, just a little. Your eyelids flutter once, then settle. The tavern makes no objection. You have become one of its stories, and stories don't need to speak, they only need to rest. You sleep, but not in the way you've known sleep before. Not as a break, or a blackout, or a folding of time into nothing. This sleep is older, stranger, more rooted. It's not something you fall into. It rises up around you, a warm and heavy fog that wraps itself beneath your skin and fills the hollow behind your ribs. You do not close your eyes so much as they are gently lowered, like shutters drawn by invisible hands who've known this ritual 1,000 times before. And though your limbs have slackened and your thoughts have slowed to the pace of dripping wax, some tiny part of you remains aware, not alert, not awake, but aware, that the tavern still breathes, that the room continues without you, as it always has, as it always will, that the silence you now inhabit has been worn smooth by centuries of tired souls just like you. You are one in a long line of strangers who have laid their burdens here like coats on a bench and found, for a few precious hours, that nothing more was required of them than simply to remain. Outside it's still dark, not city dark, not the polite dimness of lamplight and distant headlights, but true dark, the kind that settles over fields like a wool shroud and makes even the moon seem embarrassed to intrude. You feel it pressing gently against the tavern walls, not threatening, but watchful, as if the night itself stands outside, listening with one ear to the wind and the other to the creak of timber and slow breathing inside. There are no sounds of carts passing, no clatter of hooves or echo of bells, just the wind, ever patient, ever curious, brushing past the door like a forgotten guest unsure if it's welcome, but you're not afraid. Fear has no voice here. The tavern is its own protection, not through strength or fire or locks, but through age, through stillness, through the quiet dignity of a place that has survived too much to worry now. The others are asleep too, or nearly. You can sense them, curled into themselves like question marks, dreams drifting from their mouths in shallow exhales. The boy by the hearth has slid sideways, his hand now resting in the remains of a spilled drink that no one has bothered to wipe away. A woman in the far corner snores like a purring cat, soft and steady, a lullaby only the wood and dust truly understand. Even the rats have grown still. They do not scurry now. They settle. Somewhere beneath the floorboards they sleep in their own strange nests, bellies full of crumbs and stories. You think perhaps they dream too. You hope so. A single candle remains lit near the bar, forgotten perhaps, or spared. Its flame is small now, a trembling golden tongue licking the dark with less and less conviction. The pool of melted wax below it has hardened, cooled, cracked like dry lips. You watch as the flame bends, flutters, and finally straightens, as if aware you are watching and determined not to fail you just yet. It casts long shadows, thin as whispers, that stretch across the wooden walls like old ghosts reaching for warmth. You do not fear them. Shadows here are honest. They do not hide things. They reveal them. The knots in the wood, the scuffs in the floor, the carvings made by bored or broken men who needed to leave something behind, all of it becomes clearer in the flickering half-light. And you see your own shadow too, soft and slumped, a creature of patience and pause. You nod to it. It does not nod back. That feels right. You shift slightly in your seat, the only sound a gentle creak that seems to echo with exaggerated politeness. The bench accepts your weight, your movement, your discomfort. It has done so many times before. You wonder how many people have sat here before you, how many boots and bones and breathless stories have worn this plank into its present shape. You're not the first to feel your muscles turn to smoke beneath the press of a sleepless night. You're not the first to wonder if you'll ever stand again, or if, perhaps, you've become part of the tavern now, a fixture, a silence, a soul embedded in oak and shadow. Your thoughts wander, not far, just enough to graze against old memories. The sound of church bells on a distant morning, the taste of salt when you kiss someone goodbye in the rain, the ache of laughter that came too late. You do not cling to these things. They arrive like soft animals, curious, and then leave again, uninterested in staying. The tavern is too full for remembering. There's only space here for what you feel now, the pull of gravity against your eyelids, the tickle of straw beneath your feet, the way your back leans just enough to suggest trust in the wall behind you. It holds. That's all you need. A soft thud, then a groan. Somewhere upstairs? Or was it behind the wall? Someone stirs. A man, perhaps, waking from a dream of battle, or bread, or loss. His voice doesn't carry far, just a syllable, a sound without meaning. Then, silence again. You feel no need to react. The tavern absorbs all things, shouts, weeping, laughter, love. It digests emotion like a slow animal, turning it to warmth or ash, then releasing it back into the wood. That's why it always smells like something lived here long before you and still refuses to leave. The table before you holds nothing now. Your cup is dry, your bread long gone. Your hands are empty, and yet you feel full, not of food or drink, but of something quieter. A fullness that doesn't stretch or ache, but hums gently, like a lullaby in your bones. You are not lonely. You are alone, yes, but not the kind of alone that hurts. This is the kind of alone that heals, the kind that wraps you in wool and lets you forget the sharpness of the world, the kind that reminds you nothing more is needed. You close your eyes again, this time more willingly. There is no reason to keep them open. The room is not going anywhere. It will be here when you wake, if you wake. The tavern does not demand a morning. It only offers the present, stretched out like a faded blanket. And you, curled inside it, at last stop wondering what time it is. It does not matter, because you are here, and here, finally, is enough. When you open your eyes again, slowly, reluctantly, you do not know how long you've been asleep. But the air has changed, just slightly. Not colder, not warmer, only older, as if the night has thickened, brewed a little longer, and now clings more tightly to the rafters. The tavern has not moved, of course. It never does. but something about it feels deeper now, more certain, as if the building itself has decided to settle its bones a little further into the earth, pull its roof a little closer around its shoulders and sigh. There's still no fire in the hearth, only a pale outline of grey where warmth once lived. The room is quiet, not silent, no, not truly, but full of the kind of hush that knows how to carry weight. The kind of hush that doesn't come from absence but from presence so complete it needs no words. You feel it in your chest, a soft pressure, not unpleasant, like someone placing a warm hand just above your heart and saying, "You are still here," and you are. You sit without thinking. Your body does the work while your mind floats gently behind, observing like a ghost with no plans. The bench beneath you is less of a seat now and more of a suggestion, a shape remembered by your bones, a curve cradling your spine in the only way it knows how. Your legs do not stretch. They remain folded, tired but faithful. You do not crave movement. There is no urge to walk, no desire to chase anything. The world outside the tavern, with its fields and forests and hard stones and harder expectations, no longer has its claws in you. That world is a myth now, a story someone told once to fill the quiet. All that is real is here. This room, this air, this moment, this hum of unseen company. You glance around, others still sleep, some with mouths open, some with hands folded beneath cheeks. A man near the door has slumped sideways, his hat covering half his face like a lid half shut. A small puddle of drool darkens the wood beside him. No one minds. Dignity is not currency here, nor is shame. You're allowed to sag, allowed to sink, allowed to wear your weariness like a garment and let it wrinkle where it pleases. A woman nearby turns over, murmuring something in a language you don't recognize. Her voice rises only slightly, like steam slipping from a kettle, then fades back into the folds of her sleep. There are no dreams in this room that matter more than rest. The single candle still burns, just barely. Its wick has grown shy, its flame the size of a fingernail, trembling like it's embarrassed to still exist. The wax has pooled and cooled and pooled again. A strange sculpture, accidental and ancient like the stalagmites of a quiet cave. You watch it for a while. That's all you do. You watch. And somehow that is enough. The candle needs no witness. But you offer yourself as one anyway. There's something holy about its persistence, about its refusal to die before it's ready. You wonder if, perhaps, you're a bit like the candle, burned low, bent slightly, but still warm. Somewhere in the rafters, a mouse makes a sound. Not the dramatic squeak of a children's story, but a dry shuffle. The rustle of something very small carrying something slightly smaller. You imagine it dragging a piece of crust stolen from a sleeping man's pocket. You imagine it preparing its own little tavern behind the beams, a crumb for a table, a torn thread for a blanket. You do not resent it. This world belongs to the mice as much as to you, maybe more. They know how to live among the forgotten. They know how to make homes in the spaces others overlook. A cough breaks the hush, wet, harsh, real. It comes from the other side of the room. A man hunched over, his handkerchief pressed to his lips. No one turns to look. This is not the kind of place where illness surprises anyone. You do not recoil. You simply notice. The way one notices a gust of wind or a creak in a floorboard. You think about sickness, how common it is, how loyal. You think about how many times this tavern has held the sound of lungs struggling, how many times someone has sat right where you sit, feeling the burn in their throat and wondering if they would wake the next day. And yet the tavern remains, not because it is strong, but because it is still. Stillness, it seems, is the secret to survival. Your stomach grumbles, not loudly, not insistently, just a small reminder that you are still a body with needs. But the hunger feels old now, tamed. It does not bite or beg. It simply hums beneath the surface like a distant bell. You think of food, not as a meal, but as memory, a crust of bread, a spoonful of lentils, a bit of onion in oil, nothing grand. Just enough to say, I am here. I was here. I might be again. The taste is not on your tongue, but somewhere deeper, in the back of your throat and your ribs. You do not need to eat. Not yet. The hunger can wait. You lean your head back against the wall. It's hard but familiar. The stone is cool and indifferent. It does not ask questions, does not care if you are noble or nameless. It only holds you, as it has held thousands before. You wonder how many heads have rested in this exact spot, how many people have leaned back, closed their eyes, and felt, just for a moment, that the world could be kind, that here at least they were safe. You do not know their names, but you feel them, their warmth, their weariness, their quiet gratitude. Outside, the wind shifts again. It moans against the shutters, low and long, like an old friend asking to be let in. You do not answer. It does not mind. The wind is patient. It has all the time in the world. You listen. Not just to the wind, but to everything. The breath of sleepers. The faint rattle of something settling. The soft, slow groan of your own muscles remembering what it means to be still. You listen, and the tavern listens back. A place like this does not forget its listeners. Your eyes close once more, not from exhaustion, but from peace. The peace of belonging, not to people, but to place. You're not waiting for anything, not dawn, not salvation, not revelation. Only this, only now. You're a story half told, a shadow in the corner, a warmth pressed into the grain of the wood. And the tavern, dear and broken and perfect in its quiet ruin, holds you close, without asking why. The candle, in its final act of devotion, lets out a tiny sputter, a breath, no more than that, and then, with no fuss at all, goes out. You do not flinch. There is no drama in the darkness here. It arrives like an old friend returning to its favourite seat, familiar and welcome. The tavern does not mind the absence of flame. It has lived in the dark longer than it has in light. It remembers 1,000 nights darker than this, nights when even the moon hid her face behind storm clouds, and the only illumination came from memory. This darkness does not blind you. It frees you. With the candle gone, the room reveals itself in new ways, shapes dissolve, boundaries blur. The tavern becomes less a place and more a presence, something vast and intimate, something without edges, like sleep or sorrow. You sit still, not out of discipline, but because movement now would feel disrespectful. The silence is sacred. You are a guest inside it, and to disturb it would be to question its grace. Your ears, now unburdened by sight, become greedy. They devour every sound, the shifting of fabric, the slow exhale of a nearby stranger, a muffled cough tucked inside a sleeve. Somewhere above, perhaps in the loft or on the roof itself, a bird shuffles in its nest, disturbed by a dream or a drip of rain. You feel no need to interpret these sounds. They do not require meaning, they simply are. The tavern breathes through them, reminds you that life, real life, continues, whether you witness it or not. In the absence of light, you discover a kind of seeing that has nothing to do with eyes. You see with your skin now, with the weight of your limbs, with the way your breath fits itself into the rhythm of the room, and what you see is this: you belong, not because you earned it, not because you asked, but because the tavern, in its quiet, exhausted mercy, allows it. The table before you is invisible now, but you still feel its presence. You remember the grain of the wood beneath your fingers, the curve worn smooth by countless elbows and tired foreheads. You know that, inches away, a knot in the surface once caught your nail and made you pause. These things remain, even if you cannot see them. The room is full of memory that does not need your eyes. You imagine the table long after you're gone. Imagine someone else tracing the same groove, feeling the same weight in the air, wondering who came before them. You will never meet. But you will know each other, through the table, through the bench, through the dust that gathers with purpose, a soft rustle nearby, cloth against wood, a sleeper turning in their dreams, or waking. You cannot tell. They do not speak. No one does. This is not the kind of waking that needs noise. It is the kind of waking that wonders quietly if sleep might still be kinder. You hear the shift of breath, the subtle stretch of toes inside boots. Then stillness again. You do not turn your head. There is no need. You're no longer curious in the way you once were. You no longer crave answers. The tavern does not traffic in resolution, only in continuation. Here, stories don't end. They drift. They echo. They hum themselves back into the walls. Your nose detects a new scent, faint, sour, sweet, not fresh, but not unpleasant. Apples, or what remains of them. A bruised core discarded hours ago, forgotten on a windowsill, beginning to ferment in the warmth of the room. It smells like memory, like the ghost of sweetness. You let the scent fill your nostrils, and it brings with it 1,000 thoughts you didn't know you had. A market stall on a spring morning, a child biting into stolen fruit, a cider press turned by calloused hands and aching backs. The apple was never just an apple. It carried history in its skin. You wonder if it remembers being on a branch, reaching toward a sun it would never understand. The wind returns, this time more insistent. It presses against the door like a drunk trying to remember which side of the house he lives on. The latch rattles, the wood moans, but the tavern holds. Of course it does. The tavern always holds. You wonder how many storms this place has outlasted, how many winters, how many wars. The tavern is not proud of its endurance. It does not boast. It simply continues. That is its victory. That is its worship. Not in resisting ruin, but in surviving it with grace. Your eyes adjust, slowly. Shapes begin to return, though not with clarity. Just suggestion. The outline of the hearth, the slump of the barkeep's chair, the faint glow of dawn beginning to consider its options beyond the shuttered window. But dawn does not rush. It knows its place. The tavern is still in charge for now. You remain wrapped in its cloak, allowed to linger in the in-between. Not night, not morning, but that fragile space where even time seems unsure of itself. It is here, in this hourless hour, that the tavern speaks its clearest truths. Not in words, but in stillness. Not in stories, but in sighs. You place your palm on the table. The wood is cool now. The warmth has fled, or perhaps retreated deeper, where only sleep can reach. You tap once, softly, just to hear it. The sound is round, dull, kind. It tells you that the table is listening, that the tavern still knows you're here. You imagine whispering something to it. Not a secret, just a thank you. Thank you for holding me. Thank you for forgetting what I needed forgotten. Thank you for not asking me to be strong. You don't speak. You don't need to. The tavern already knows. A sudden memory, sharp and strange, intrudes. A moment from a life that feels impossibly far away. A candle in another room, a different bench. A voice that called your name, not to hurt you, not to command, but to invite. You remember the way that voice felt in your spine, the way it settled behind your eyes, and then it's gone. The tavern takes it gently, like a parent removing a toy from a child's hand during sleep. You don't resist. It was never yours to keep. The room exhales. Everyone still here has chosen to remain. Not because they must, but because they can. There are no clocks in the tavern, no deadlines, no bells to toll the end of comfort. You begin to feel sleep again. Not the old kind, the new kind, the one that fills you from the feet upward, like rising water, gentle and slow. You do not fight it. You allow it to carry you, to rock you, to place you gently where you need to be. And the tavern, ever watchful, ever worn, cradles you in its shadowed silence, until nothing remains but breath, and the knowing that you are safe. The sleep that comes now is deeper than before, not because you are more tired, but because the tavern has decided to keep you. Not trap you, no. The tavern traps no one, but hold you gently in the hollow of its ribcage like a breath it forgot to release. You're no longer just resting in a room. You're inside something older than walls, older than wood, older than worry. You're part of the tavern now, a flicker in its memory, a softness in its floorboards, a quiet weight it welcomes without question. It does not need your name. It does not want your story. It only asks that you let go. Let go of the hours, the names, the small, sharp edges of a life lived in constant reaching. Here, you're not expected to reach. You're allowed to remain. And so, you do. You sleep not like a person, but like a stone at the bottom of a still pond, unmoving, unnoticed, perfectly cradled by the water that surrounds it. When you stir again, whether hours have passed or merely heartbeats you cannot say, the light has shifted, barely, just enough to suggest that dawn is watching through a crack in the shutters, unsure whether to announce itself or slink away in embarrassment. This is not the triumphant dawn of paintings and poems. This is the shy, smudged dawn of dirt roads and sour breath. The kind of morning that arrives with a limp and keeps its voice low, afraid to disturb what little peace remains. You do not mind. Grand sunrises have no place in a tavern like this. The light that creeps in now is enough. Soft, grey, apologetic. It touches the edge of a tankard, the corner of a boot, the curve of a sleeping man's back, and stops there. It knows better than to push. Your joints protest as you shift, not in anger, but in honesty. They speak to you in the crackling dialect of the lived-in, reminding you that even stillness leaves marks. You stretch, slowly, cautiously, like someone testing ice. The bench beneath you has groaned along with your spine, and together you make a symphony of soft complaint. It feels good, this shared discomfort. Real, undeniable. You are alive. You ache. That's proof enough. Someone else wakes, a rustle, a sniff, the clink of something being moved without much care. A man, by the sound of him. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. His body says enough as it unfolds itself from whatever shape it had slept in. You do not look. He does not look at you. The rule is unspoken but universal. There are no eyes in the morning, only ears. You share the space without claiming it. Like animals on the same patch of grass, aware of each other, uninterested in intrusion. The tavern breathes again, a little deeper now. Not loud, not lively, just fuller. As if it too is waking, slowly, skeptically, reluctantly. It is not ready to resume being a place of noise and spilled drink and shouted laughter. But it is thinking about it. You can feel it in the floorboards, in the way the shadows shift under the tables, in the creak of a door you hadn't noticed before. Somewhere, perhaps in the kitchen, someone stirs embers, not enough to call it fire, just heat. Enough to nudge the chill from the air, enough to say, I remember how to warm you, even if I don't quite feel like doing it yet. The smell returns next. Not fresh, not sharp, but familiar. Wood smoke, dust, and something faintly meaty. Or maybe that's just your memory playing tricks. You imagine a pot hanging over tired coals, inside it some tired stew, yesterday's bread, yesterday's bones, today's best guess at breakfast. You can almost taste it. Not with your tongue, but with your memory. Hunger stirs again, but still it waits its turn. In this tavern even hunger learns patience. You stand, not quickly. There is no rush in the world you now inhabit. Your feet find the floor, cold and uneven. You feel the grain of the wood beneath your toes, the places where it's worn smooth, and the places where it still bites a little. The tavern does not pretend to comfort. It offers only truth, and in that, strange kindness. You walk a few steps just to remember how. The air smells like stories no one finished telling. Your fingers brush the edge of a table, the back of a chair. Each object greets you like a dog too tired to wag its tail but glad you're still here. Someone coughs, someone mutters. A child. How had you not noticed a child before? Whimpers softly in a dream. The tavern makes space for them all. There is no right way to wake here. There is only waking and breathing and maybe eventually leaving, but not yet. You find the door. Or rather, the door finds you. You hadn't meant to approach it. But your feet wandered there, drawn by the promise of something not quite new. Your hand rests on the latch. The wood is worn smooth by hands that came before yours, some smaller, some stronger, all searching. You do not open the door, you simply touch it, feel the cold through your skin, hear the wind still whispering outside, not impatient, just persistent. It does not ask you to leave, it only reminds you that there is a world beyond the walls, a world that will wait. Behind you, the tavern stretches, not with noise, but with memory. It remembers you now, not as a guest, but as a part of it. It has taken your warmth, your weight, your silence, and folded them into its own story. You will not be remembered by name, you will not be carved into the beam, but the bench will recall the shape of your rest. The table will remember the print of your fingers. The air will hold the echo of your breathing for one more night. That is enough. And when you leave, whenever that may be, the tavern will remain, waiting, watching, patient as stone, soft as dust, wide as forgetting. It will not miss you, but it will welcome you again. as it always has, as it always will. And so for a while you simply stand there, your hand resting on the wood of the door, your feet planted where others once stood, and your breath mingling with the stale, sacred quiet of the room, while the tavern thinks around you. It doesn't speak, not with words. It speaks in creaks, in cool draughts, in the smell of ash and damp wool and boots that have travelled too far, in the faint, sticky slickness of spilled ale long dried, then reawakened by the foggy breath of morning. It speaks in the patience of spaces left untouched, the corner with the broken stool, the shelf with the cracked jug, the window that warps the world like a dream remembered wrong. And you, small and unimportant but curiously eternal in this moment, listen without needing to understand. Because that's the thing about old places like this. They don't care if you understand. They only care if you stay, for a second, for a lifetime, for whatever time you can spare. You press your forehead gently to the door just for the coolness of it, just to feel something stiller than thought, and in that stillness, something inside you quiets, like a question that finally gets tired of asking itself. Outside, the day is probably beginning. Somewhere beyond the warped shutters and heavy beams, someone is yelling at a mule, someone is boiling water over a half-hearted fire, someone is picking at their breakfast with the vague resentment of the living. Chickens might be arguing. A blacksmith might be cursing at a bent nail. A mother might be wiping a child's nose with the edge of her sleeve and wondering what the point of anything is. The world in all its muddy, unpoetic glory continues, and soon maybe you'll return to it, but not yet. The tavern still holds you in its soft, crooked hands made of splinters and soot and 1,000 memories pressed into the grain of the floorboards. You walk away from the door slowly, as if you're afraid you might startle the morning. Your fingers trail along the edge of a long bench, feel the ghost of laughter, of drunken confessions, of quiet weeping someone thought was unseen. All of it is here, not visible, not gone, just settled, like dust on a windowsill, waiting for sunlight that never quite arrives. The barkeep, or perhaps the idea of the barkeep since he is still more shape than man at this hour, appears near the far wall. He doesn't look at you, and you don't greet him. That's not how mornings work in a place like this. There are no cheerful exchanges, no bright good mornings, no hot coffee poured by hands that care how you slept. There is only acknowledgement, quiet and sufficient, a nod, a glance, the slow placement of a wooden mug on a worn table. You don't rush to claim it. You let it sit, steaming faintly with something that smells like herbs boiled too long, or maybe just water that once dreamed of being soup. It's not meant to delight you. It's meant to wake you without startling you. You sit down beside it and let your hands wrap around it like a prayer you've said too many times to believe in fully, but still can't stop saying. The liquid is warm, not hot, not tasty, but warm. And in this hour, that's a kind of miracle. You sip without ceremony, and it settles in your belly like a stone wrapped in linen. Soft, solid, not unwelcome. Around you, the tavern begins to exhale its sleepers one by one. A man stretches and groans like an animal preparing for work it doesn't love. A woman braids her hair with the urgency of someone who knows she will be judged the moment she steps into the street. A young boy with no shoes rubs his eyes and says nothing, because what's there to say when every day is a version of the same story? The sounds of waking are not sharp here. They are thick and slow, like molasses sliding down old wood. You let them wash over you, not needing to join, not needing to withdraw. You are allowed, just this once, to be undecided. A cat? Where did it come from? Leaps silently onto a table near the hearth and begins licking something off the edge of a plate no one remembers leaving. Its fur is patchy. Its tail is too short. Its eyes are gold and unforgiving. It lives here, clearly, not as a pet, not as a mascot, but as a witness. And it watches you now in that indifferent, ancient way only tavern cats and saints know how to do. You hold its gaze for a moment, then you look away, because in its eyes is the memory of every night you've ever tried to forget, and it doesn't blink. The door opens, not wide, just enough to let in the idea of outside, a sliver of air colder than it should be, a flash of muddy light, the sound of hooves somewhere distant, soft and wet on the road. Someone leaves, not with fanfare, not with goodbye, just a figure moving from one greyness to another. The tavern sighs again. It always does when someone leaves, not because it's sad, but because it's old, and everything old sighs when touched by change. You think about leaving, not seriously, just like someone pressing their fingers against a bruise to see if it still hurts. You have nowhere to be, no clock, no coin in your pocket that demands to be spent. But still, there is a weight in your bones that says eventually, not now, but eventually. You finish the warm liquid. It was never meant to be finished, just meant to hold you still for a while. You set the mug down. The table accepts it without judgment. Someone laughs, not loudly, but enough to remind you that this place is not just for sleeping and waiting and forgetting. Sometimes it's for remembering too, remembering how to be human in all its messy, aching, undeserved glory. You think about how many people have sat here and said too much, or not enough. How many have fallen in love for no reason, or left for reasons that didn't make sense. You think about how many have come back, not because they were welcomed, but because they weren't turned away. The tavern is a church for those who stopped believing, a home for those who never learned how to be homes. A pause in the sentence no one wants to finish, and you, for this morning at least, are part of its punctuation. You stand again, stretch. Feel the ache in your shoulders like a farewell letter, written by someone with poor penmanship and good intentions. You nod to the barkeep. He nods back, or maybe he doesn't. Maybe that was just the shadow shifting. You walk to the door, you don't open it. Not yet. Because the tavern, in all its broken mercy, is still breathing. And for now, it breathes with you. There is a kind of quiet that feels heavier than silence. You feel it now. Not oppressive, but weighty. Like a wool blanket pulled over your thoughts. The tavern carries this quiet not as a burden, but as its natural state. It is the sound of breath against beam, of dreams collapsing into cobwebs, of moments left unfinished and rotting gently in the corners of memory. You have not moved. Your hand is still near the door, but the idea of leaving has already dimmed. Not because you've chosen to stay, but because the outside world has failed to convince you it's any better than this stillness. The air smells old, but not in a bad way, in the way books smell when they've been left unread too long, or like earth that's never been touched by a shovel. There is comfort in decay if you let yourself look closely, if you let yourself soften toward the things that crumble. You walk back toward your seat, but not directly. You drift, like a leaf on a lazy stream, letting the floor guide you with its soft creaks and slow memory. Your fingers brush over surfaces that once knew joy. A chair leg worn down from restless feet. A corner of a table where someone carved a name too shallow to last. You're not alone, though no one speaks. People still sit in corners, lean against walls, rest their heads on tables sticky with last night's regrets. No one asks questions here. Questions are what the outside world demands. The tavern only asks that you sit or sleep or exist, and perhaps eventually vanish in a way so quiet that not even the dust notices. The light coming in through the warped windows is weak and confused. Not quite morning, not quite memory. It turns everything a pale grey, like the world is being viewed through old linen. You see outlines, not shapes. You see colours drained of ambition. Even the fire, if there ever was one, has become a collection of polite embers, red as apology, soft as sin. Someone is humming. You can't tell where it's coming from. It isn't a song. It has no tune, no rhythm. Just a long, low note stretched thin across the silence like a thread holding the room together. You do not know if it's real. You do not care. A dog stirs near the hearth, small, scrappy, grey in places where it used to be brown. It lifts its head, looks at nothing, sighs in the way only old dogs can sigh, and puts its head back down. It is not guarding. It is not waiting. It is simply continuing. You envy it. The dog understands something you are only just beginning to grasp, that not all mornings require motion, that sometimes the greatest act of rebellion is refusing to begin. The barkeep, who may have been standing in the same place for years, slowly picks something up from behind the counter, a cloth or a bottle, or a piece of his own memory. He moves like a man underwater, each motion deliberate, exaggerated, eternal. He pours something into a cracked mug, wipes his hand on his apron, and disappears behind a curtain that doesn't fully reach the floor. You're not invited. You're not forbidden. You're simply left. And that in this place is the purest form of trust. You hear a sneeze, a cough, a chair leg dragged without apology. Life asserting itself but not demanding attention. There is no performance here. No one is trying to be anything more than a body with breath. You wonder how many people passed through these walls and never returned. How many ghosts are still here, too polite to interrupt. How many secrets were whispered into mugs, swallowed with lukewarm beer, or forgotten under the weight of a heavy sleep. The tavern keeps none of it organised. It is not a librarian of sins. It is a compost pile of confession, letting time chew it all down into something fertile. Your own thoughts feel heavier now. Not sad exactly, but swollen, thick with the sediment of long-forgotten worries. They settle behind your eyes, in your jaw, at the base of your spine. You try to remember what brought you here, what path led to this crooked bench and this lopsided mug. You can't, or maybe you won't. Maybe that part of the story is no longer relevant. Here, no one asks for your before, only your now. The tavern deals in presence, in flesh, not flashbacks. A woman across the room leans back in her chair. Her eyes are closed, her mouth is slightly open. Her face wears the same expression as a person who has stopped waiting for anything. You don't know her name, you never will. But in this moment, she is your mirror. The two of you, strangers in posture, united in surrender, sharing space without needing to fill it. You think about saying something, a greeting, a blessing, a line of poetry that might wrap this scene in purpose. But the tavern has no appetite for language, only breath, and the occasional laugh, if it's soft enough. The spoon clinks, not urgently, just enough to say, "I'm still here." You hear it again, then nothing. You begin to wonder if the tavern has moods, days when it wakes up cheerful or bitter or resigned. But no, it's not a person, it's a wound that learned how to sing, a bruise that found comfort in its colour. It is always like this, always was, always will be. You are the one who changes. You are the weather in its endless sky. Eventually, because time still exists even if it doesn't knock, someone stands, coins jingle, boots scuff, a door creaks, and the world outside breathes in whoever just left. You do not look up. You simply acknowledge the shift. One less presence, one more silence. The tavern shrugs it off. You stretch again. Not because you're leaving, but because your body has remembered itself. You flex your fingers, your toes. You touch the wood of the table once more. It is warm, or your hand is. The difference is irrelevant. You look around one last time, or perhaps for the first time. The room is still the room. The people are still half shadows. The light still pretends not to care. And yet, you feel changed, or maybe more revealed. And in this breathless space where no one knows your name, where nothing is asked and nothing is promised, you feel, not happy, not healed, but gently allowed. And that for now is everything. There's something strange that happens when you stay too long in a place built for passing through. Time thickens, yes, but so does identity, or rather its absence. You forget your name first, of course, and that's easy. It was never that useful here anyway, but then you forget the shape of your signature, the colour of your favourite coat, the reason you ever felt rushed. The tavern doesn't ask you to forget. It simply stops offering reminders. No mirrors, no clocks, no polite questions about where you're headed. It removes everything that reflects you back to yourself. And in doing so, it leaves you with something gentler. Not selflessness, just stillness. And in that stillness, as you sit once more in your chosen corner, or perhaps one that chose you, the room tilts softly toward a memory that isn't quite yours. You feel it in the tilt of the chair, in the stain on the ceiling shaped like a crooked bird, in the smell that drifts from the kitchen again, boiled grain and old onion, and something that might once have been meat, but now just smells like time. You're inside a place that has absorbed centuries of waiting, waiting for news, waiting for warmth, waiting for someone who didn't come back. The man beside you. Did he sit down minutes ago or hours ago? Sips from his cup and makes no sound. His hands are calloused. His eyes are pale and uncurious. You do not speak. You do not need to. This is a room where words go to die, quietly and with dignity. He lifts his cup, swallows whatever was inside, and lets his hand rest on the table like a forgotten tool. He might be a farmer. He might be a thief. He might be no one. And that somehow is the most comforting thought of all. Here, you're not required to be anyone but breathing. Someone has lit a candle, not a fresh one. The wick spits, and the wax pools immediately in a trembling dish. The flame is weak and loyal, casting halos of shadow against the nearest wall. It makes the room look smaller. Or maybe it just makes it honest. Light has a way of telling truths no one asked for. You stare at the flame and feel the pull of memory again. Not of something you lived, but something someone else once whispered to this same light. A secret, a sorrow, a promise broken so gently that no one even noticed. The air around you shifts and you realize the tavern is listening. It always listens. Not with ears, but with its wood, its walls, its warped nails. Every crack in the plaster, every knot in the beam holds the echo of some long-lost story. A toast made in defiance, a cry muffled in someone's collar, a love confessed with shaking hands. You imagine the floor beneath your boots layered with these sounds, packed into the grain like sediment. You wonder how many feet have pressed them deeper, how many boots, bare heels, and drunken stumbles have helped turn words into history. There is movement near the fire. A girl, no older than 12, tends to the embers. Her face is ash-marked, her fingers quick. She doesn't look at you. She doesn't look at anyone. Her role here is ancient, invisible caretaker of other people's warmth. You watch as she nudges the coals, adds a scrap of kindling, and disappears through a low doorway with no ceremony. The fire responds grudgingly, flaring just enough to prove it still can. The room sighs, appreciative, but unimpressed. You lean back. Your bones speak to you again, but more gently now, like old friends catching up. You're not in pain, you're simply present. And that's its own kind of discomfort, isn't it? Presence. The way it asks you to notice, the way it refuses distraction. You become aware of your heartbeat, of your breath, of the softness behind your eyes, of the way the air settles in your lungs and then asks to be let go again. It's almost annoying, this awareness, but it's also honest, and honesty is rare in the world outside this room. A man laughs near the wall, just once, short, sharp, and oddly joyful. No one joins him, no one asks why. The laugh floats for a moment, then vanishes into the beams like smoke. You wonder what story played behind his eyes. You wonder if you'll laugh like that. Not because something is funny, but because your heart is tired of being still. It's not time yet. But maybe soon. The room grows warmer, not because the fire has grown, but because your body has surrendered to it. Your muscles, your mind, both tired of resisting. You feel yourself sink again, into the grain of the wood, the thrum of the floor, the breath of the space. The tavern has taken you in again, not because it needs you, but because it has never once pushed anything away. You close your eyes, but you do not sleep. Not quite. You hover, between here and somewhere else, between memory and dream, between self and space. And in that liminal place you hear it, the heartbeat of the tavern, slow, patient, wiser than any priest, gentler than any bed. It tells you, without words, you are held, not remembered, not celebrated, just held. And somehow, that is enough. The moment between staying and leaving has always been a strange one, and here in this tavern, it feels like an entire season all by itself. You aren't moving, not truly. But the idea of movement has begun to flirt with the edges of your stillness, like a breeze teasing a curtain. You shift slightly, not enough to cause alarm, just enough to remember that you are made of joints and tendons and weight. The mug near your hand is empty, or near enough, its contents reduced to a dark ring of residue, and something sticky your thumb accidentally brushes. You don't wipe it off. You simply place your hand on the table again and feel it there. Old wood, stubborn wood, bearing the stories of elbows and arguments and hands like yours resting in moments like this. Somewhere in the building, above or behind or within, something drops. Not a crash, not a threat, just the sound of gravity being obeyed. It could have been a spoon, a coin, a bone. You'll never know, you're not meant to. Because this is a place where some noises come without explanation, and where no one is required to solve them. You listen more closely now, not because you are curious, but because the quiet has become textured, like a wall you want to run your fingers over. You can hear someone's breath, not your own, coming slow and raspy from across the room. It sounds like sleep, but the kind of sleep earned, not gifted. You hear the faint crackle of firewood almost done with its task, the whisper of shifting weight on straw beds up in the loft, and beyond it all, beyond the walls, beyond the world, the wind doing something it was not given permission to do. Sing. Not a melody, but a long, eerie note that rises and fades without ever fully disappearing. It curls around the tavern like a forgotten debt, a promise once broken under starlight. You do not shiver. The tavern holds the cold at bay, not through warmth, but through sameness. Temperature means less here. Everything has settled into an agreement, to not be sharp, to not be sudden, to simply remain. Someone stirs beside you. You don't look. It is enough to feel the movement in your periphery, to sense the body adjusting its story. The tavern lets you feel time without measuring it. You could have been here for minutes or days or something stranger. Outside, the sun might be bleeding into the sky or hiding again. You don't know. You don't care. You have forgotten the need to mark hours, to divide your breath into tasks. There is only now and now and now. Each moment stacking softly atop the next like folded linen, worn and warm. You stretch a leg. It doesn't thank you, but it doesn't resist either. The soreness is quiet, agreeable. Your spine creaks a little as you shift, and the sound blends so naturally with the beams above that it's unclear whether it came from you or the ceiling. A plate is pushed aside somewhere. Something drips. A man mumbles in a tongue too thick for you to understand, but not thick enough to be unrecognizable as sadness. You want to ask him what he lost, but that is not what people do here. You do not dig in others' silences. You simply sit near them and share yours. The barkeep is back again, or maybe still here, or maybe he never existed, and this shape behind the counter is simply the tavern's will made flesh. He wipes something with something. Nothing is cleaner when he's done, but the act is enough. It signals continuation. Not service, not hospitality, just the simple insistence that this space, this crooked haven of soot and sweat and stories, will persist, regardless of who watches. You want to thank him, but you know better. Words like thank you break things here. You offer him a nod, or maybe you just think you did. Either way, the moment passes cleanly. A woman by the door is laughing, not loudly, not even happily. It's the kind of laugh that leaks from the side of the mouth when a thought surprises you by being true. She's alone, wrapped in a shawl too thin for protection. Her eyes are closed, her teeth are not perfect. She might have been beautiful once, or maybe she still is if you tilt your head and squint through time. She does not speak. She doesn't need to. The laugh said everything, and it was enough. You reach for the mug again, not because you're thirsty, but because your hand misses holding something. The weight of the cup reminds you of nights in other places, other lifetimes, when comfort came in objects, in touch, in anything that asked nothing of you. You wonder how many people before you have clutched this same mug, not for drink, but for anchor. The rim is chipped. The handle is smooth from fingers pressed in repetition. You close your eyes and hold it, like a memory not yet ready to be returned. Outside, a horse neighs, or a man coughs, or the wind finds another crack in the wall to whisper through. You don't turn to look. Sound is not something you chase here. It's something you absorb, like warmth through wool. The candle on the table leans toward you slightly as if sharing a secret. Its flame wavers but does not die. Neither do you. And so you stay, not because you must, not because you're trapped, but because in this moment the idea of leaving feels as absurd as climbing a ladder to the moon. The tavern is not a destination, but a pause, a deep inhale, a forgotten lullaby sung by stone and smoke and sleep. And as long as it holds you, gently, unremarkably, with no need to explain why, you will not move. Because what waits outside is the noise of clocks, the demand of names, the sharpness of roads that do not bend for tired feet. But here, everything bends. Even you. There is a peculiar comfort in being forgotten. Not the sharp, lonely kind that aches like an unanswered letter, but the soft, dissolving kind that erases the edges of your presence until you're no longer expected to perform being alive. The tavern offers that comfort without ceremony. No one looks at you. No one wonders who you are or how long you've been here. Your face might as well be the pattern in the wood grain, your breath just part of the room's natural ventilation. The bench beneath you has conformed to your shape as if it always expected someone like you. Your spine has surrendered to its crooked embrace. Your hands, which once sought tasks or warmth or the meaning of things, now rest palms down, open, like forgotten tools. You're not bored, you're not waiting, you're simply unwound. As if every part of you that once rattled now hums quietly with the walls, with the hearth, with the dust that floats like memory in shafts of tired light. Somewhere not far, someone coughs a story into their sleeve. It might be a song or a spell or the end of something no one else noticed was happening. The sound doesn't disturb the room. It joins it. Like a pebble sinking into mud, absorbed rather than rejected. The air carries the scent of boiled barley, of sour ale, of worn leather, and the wet dog that has found some corner to curl into. You notice it all, not with judgment, but with the lazy reverence of someone who no longer needs things to be beautiful in order to be real. You've passed through the part of the night where senses matter, and into the phase where only sensations remain. A warmth behind your eyes, the weight of your tongue, the long exhale you didn't realize you were holding. The barkeep's hands are slower now, or maybe you're simply watching more closely. He moves with the resigned grace of a man who's wiped more tables than faces he's kissed. His cloth is damp, his movements circular, endless, holy in their repetition. You wonder if he knows your name, not your true name, but the one the tavern has given you. The name of the quiet shape in the third seat from the wall, the one who stares but does not speak, who breathes like furniture. He never asks you for coin. Perhaps he knows you have none. Perhaps he knows you have paid in something else. Silence, maybe, or presence, or the willingness to dissolve. At a table near the door, two men are playing a game without pieces. Their hands move across the scarred wood as if sliding invisible tokens. They murmur numbers and grin without smiling. You can't tell if they're gambling or grieving. Their laughter is dry and crumbles in the air like stale bread. One of them wears a hat too big for his head, the other a scar that splits his eyebrow in two. They seem ancient, even if they are young. The tavern ages everyone the same, not in years but in softness. Here, time rounds the corners of things. Sharpness dulls. Memory becomes more about feeling than fact. You shift again, just slightly. Your foot brushes against something beneath the table. Not a rat, not this time, just a forgotten shoe or a piece of someone's story left behind. You leave it there. You have no claim to it. Ownership is a foreign concept in a place where even your own thoughts feel borrowed. You glance at the window, if it can be called that, a fogged, smudged square of glass too weary to resist the night outside. Through it, you see nothing. Not darkness, just the absence of scenery. The world has withdrawn its stage as if knowing you no longer need the illusion of destination. A candle gutters out nearby. No one relights it. Its duty is complete. It has seen enough. The shadows it once held at bay now reassert themselves with quiet dignity, wrapping corners in velvet and drawing lines between bodies with gentle indifference. You begin to wonder if the tavern dreams, and if so, what of? Does it remember every footstep, every confession whispered against stone, every tear wiped away with bread crust or sleeve? Or does it, like you, let go of memory the moment it becomes heavy? Is that what peace is? Not forgetting, but being unburdened by the need to remember. Your breath has slowed, the kind of rhythm the body chooses only when it no longer thinks it has anywhere to be. You count the moments between thoughts, and the silence grows longer, more complete, not empty, but full of things you're not meant to understand. You close your eyes again, just for a moment, and find yourself surrounded by sounds that do not belong to time. The creak of bones not your own, the hush of cloth against stone, the wet sound of someone chewing something soft and unlabelled. These are not intrusive, they are lullabies written in old dialects, and you are fluent, suddenly, without study. You recall, distantly, the taste of something. Bread, perhaps, or a memory of bread, crumbly, sour, eaten not for flavour, but for survival. You remember chewing slowly so your hunger wouldn't finish before your ration. Here in the tavern the hunger is different. It is not for food, it is for gentleness, for stillness, and somehow it is fed. The dog snores now, a deep satisfied rumble that seems to shake the legs of the table. You smile, or your face thinks about smiling. No one sees, no one reacts. You are free here to feel small joys without having to explain them. That might be the most generous form of freedom, to feel without scrutiny. And as the night deepens, or maybe it's already dawn, you realize something strange and holy. You have not been judged. Not once, not by the walls, not by the people, not even by yourself. The tavern does not require improvement. It offers no advice. It does not ask you to be better. Only present, only breathing, only soft enough to belong. And so you stay. You remain. And the tavern in its crooked, crumbling, sacred way holds you. By now, the night has shaped itself around you like a second skin. You're no longer a guest in the tavern, no longer a visitor from another century. You're part of the architecture, not stone or wood exactly, but something softer and more necessary, like breath, like weariness, like a sigh so long it became a structure. The bench beneath you no longer complains. The air in your lungs is the same air the barkeep breathes, the same air the dog has claimed. It is old air, used and reused by centuries of bodies no different than yours. People who, like you, came here with dust on their shoulders and something heavy inside. Not grief, always. Sometimes just the kind of tired that doesn't have a name. You understand now why no one speaks much here. Words can't carry that kind of weight. But silence can. Silence, you've learned, is stronger than noise. It holds more, forgives more, listens better. It is the language of the tavern, and you are fluent now without even trying. Someone moves past your shoulder, slow and hunched. Their cloak brushes your sleeve and you don't flinch. Their body smells of wet wool, sweat and smoke. You do not turn. You don't need to see them to know they are part of the same pattern, the same song. You feel them pass, then disappear into the thick dark near the hearth, where another figure already sits, or sleeps, or vanishes depending on the angle of the light. You are surrounded but not crowded. Not one of these souls means you harm. No one here wants anything from you. In a world built on want, that alone feels like a miracle. No one is trying to sell you something or fix you, or ask you what you plan to do next. You're not even asked to wake up. You may hover, half dreaming, for as long as the walls remain. The ceiling is lower than you remembered, or maybe you've grown, or perhaps the beams have simply begun to lean closer, curious to know what sort of creature you've become. You look up and trace the cracks, the ancient dust, the thumbprints of craftsmen long gone. It's beautiful in the way a grandmother's hands are beautiful, bent, dry, full of stories, unconcerned with vanity. These beams have heard more prayers than the local church. They've borne witness to promises made and broken, fights that ended in laughter, laughter that ended in tears. They have absorbed it all and still they remain. That kind of endurance humbles you. It invites you to sit straighter, breathe deeper, and accept that sometimes just being there is enough. Your fingers brush something on the table, a groove, a notch, a carved initial. You imagine the hand that made it, trembling or sure, young or gnarled. Perhaps it was scratched by a man waiting for someone who never came, or by a woman so full of love she needed to leave a mark before the feeling passed. Maybe it was a child, bored and impatient, long since turned to dust. You press your fingertip into the groove and close your eyes. You're not trying to summon them. You're simply acknowledging that they were here, that they mattered once to someone, even if only to themselves. The tavern remembers what history does not, and in that remembering nothing is truly lost. A spoon clinks against wood. Someone is eating again. Thick stew perhaps, or porridge congealed to the shape of its bowl. The sound is rhythmic, patient, like a heartbeat. You hear the scrape, the slurp, the pause. There's no hurry. There never is. You wonder about their hunger, if it's deep or just habitual. Sometimes we eat because our mouths don't know what else to do. Here the food is humble, but sacred. Every bowl served is an act of mercy, not for taste, but for warmth, for grounding, for the reminder that the body must still be honoured, even in places where the soul is allowed to rest. The fire crackles again, this time louder. A piece of wood gives up with a pop, splinters collapsing into orange dust. The glow catches your eye, and for a moment you watch the embers dance. They are mesmerizing, alive and yet dying, like stars if stars were honest. You wonder if your thoughts are visible to the flame, if it sees how far you've come, Not in miles, but in surrender. You have let go of so much. The ache in your spine, the name of your first mistake, the noise of the road behind you. It's all somewhere else now, held by the tavern or burned away by time, and you feel lighter. Not healed, but unburdened, which might be the first step. A low hum begins at the far end of the room. You're not sure who starts it. It's not a song, not really, just a sound. Software circular. It catches in the rafters and wraps itself around the candle smoke. Others join in, not with melody but with breath. The room becomes a bowl of sound, deep, round, and safe. You hum too, not loudly, just enough. The note is nameless, the emotion behind it too large for words, but it is understood. Everyone here has survived something, everyone here is tired, and everyone here for one sacred moment is singing without asking why. The hum fades, not abruptly, but like fog lifting. You don't open your eyes, you don't need to. Your body knows this silence now, trusts it. You let it cradle you. You let the floor be enough. You let the dark have you, not as a prisoner, but as a guest of honour. No one claps, no one speaks. A chair creaks in approval, a boot scuffs, the fire nods, and then nothing. Just breathe, just stillness, just the tavern, as it has always been, waiting without expectation, listening without interruption, holding without conditions. And you, in the heart of it all, not seeking sleep, but receiving it. By now, the concept of time has completely let go of your shoulders. It has wandered off like a drunk who stepped outside for air and never returned. There are no hours here, only a slow, honey-thick unfolding of one sensation into the next. The brush of wool against your wrist, the ache behind your knees that feels almost tender, the occasional drip of something unnamed from somewhere above that is probably just melted wax. Probably. The tavern no longer feels like a place you entered. It feels like something that grew around you, the way moss slowly overtakes stone, not in a rush, but with ancient certainty. You're not simply inside the tavern. You're part of it now, a breath caught in its lungs, a warm silence folded into the creases of its mood. The flicker of firelight no longer pulls your attention. It lives behind your eyes, dim and steady, as if the hearth has taken up residence in your own mind, crackling gently between thoughts. You haven't spoken in what feels like centuries, and the beauty of that silence is almost too much to name. The last word you said has long been forgotten. Maybe it was yes or please or the beginning of a joke, but it doesn't matter now. Here, communication flows through posture, through shared warmth, through the nod of one soul to another across a room when no one is quite awake and no one is entirely asleep. You feel your spine align with the curve of the wall behind you. It's uneven, made of stones too stubborn to pretend they were ever cut precisely, yet there is something deeply comforting in their blunt honesty. These stones were stacked by hands long dead, but not forgotten. You think about the mason, the way his fingers must have bled against the sharper edges, the way he grunted under the weight, the way he pressed mortar into the cracks like sealing secrets into the earth. You imagine him stopping to wipe his brow with a sleeve soaked in the dust of centuries, looking up at the future tavern with something that might have been pride or might have been resentment. But either way, he finished it. He left this wall for you, and you lean against it now, as if it always knew you were coming. Across the room, the barkeep is talking to someone who may or may not be real. His voice is low, not whispering, just disinterested in volume. You catch fragments, something about a dog with two tails, a woman who drank candle wax on a dare, a bishop who once pissed in the fire by mistake. None of it makes sense, all of it feels true. The listener doesn't interrupt, he just nods, once, twice, perhaps asleep with his eyes open. You admire that. The ability to accept stories without demanding they be logical. In this place, truth doesn't mean accuracy. It means resonance. If a story rings inside your bones, it's true enough. The table beside yours now holds a pile of bones, chicken, maybe, or something pretending to be chicken. The bones are stacked neatly, reverently, like tiny monuments to an animal's brief but significant existence. Someone took their time. The meat has been cleaned from them with the kind of efficiency that only hunger or habit can teach. A small puddle of grease has formed beside the plate. It glistens like an oil painting forgotten in a museum no one visits anymore. You watch as a single fly hovers above it, lazy and indecisive. It lands, rubs its front legs together like it's about to give a speech, then changes its mind and buzzes off toward the rafters. You envy its confidence, its ability to move from moment to moment without explanation. Your hand itches slightly, the kind of itch that isn't on the skin but somewhere underneath. You flex your fingers. The joints pop like soft punctuation. You wonder, not for the first time, what your body remembers that your mind has chosen to forget. The bruises with no stories, the aches with no origin, the lines in your palm that were not there a season ago. You stare at your hand like it's an old friend you once wronged. Then you place it flat on the table, palm down, as if to say, I am still here. The table says nothing, but the wood creaks softly in return. Forgiveness, maybe. Someone drops a coin. It hits the floor with a sound that startles nobody. A round, resigned little noise. Not the sharp clink of wealth, but the dull thud of currency too familiar to be revered. The owner doesn't reach for it. Maybe it's not worth the effort. Maybe it's not theirs. Maybe, in this place, possession has become irrelevant. Everything you touch already belonged to someone else, and everything you leave behind will belong to someone new. The tavern does not hoard, it recycles, even memories. You feel the fire dim, not die, just shift moods. It burns with less insistence now, more like a candle holding a vigil than a hearth demanding attention. Its light brushes the stone walls like a fading memory. You realize, with a strange softness, that you're not alone in your exhaustion. Everyone in the room carries the same weight, the same gentleness, the same unravelling. A woman with braids unbraided now leans her head against her own shoulder. A man with dirt on his cheeks and his boots untied is humming without sound. Even the dog is dreaming, its legs twitching slightly, chasing something slow and dumb in the landscape of its mind. You breathe in through your nose. The smell is old and kind, like the scent of a book no one has opened in decades. You want to bottle it, not to keep but to remember. The smell of safety, of people who have nothing left to prove, of a world that lets you rest without apology. You close your eyes for a moment, or longer. It doesn't matter. The tavern holds you either way, because here there are no alarms, no destinations, no expectations, only the soft, unremarkable miracle of stillness. And as your thoughts stretch and curl into smaller and smaller shapes, you begin to understand what the tavern has been whispering all along. Not every story needs an ending. Some are meant to be rested in, like beds or arms, or this very moment, and so you do. The tavern no longer feels like a structure you can exit. It has slipped the definition of place and become something else entirely. It lives now in the folds of your breath, in the ache behind your knees, in the quiet hum at the edge of your thoughts that sounds suspiciously like peace. The longer you sit, or perhaps lie, it's hard to tell anymore. The more you feel yourself unfastened from the outer world. No more centuries, no more towns, no names to carry or pronouns to correct. Just you, the fire, and the wood grain that swirls beneath your fingertips like it's trying to remember your story better than you can. You trace it slowly, letting your nail follow the ridges of a knot that's older than the kingdom outside. It doesn't lead anywhere, not really, but you don't mind. Purpose is overrated in places like this. Here, wandering is holy. Slowness is survival. Being still is not the absence of doing, it's the most defiant act of all. Your eyelids feel like parchment, dry, delicate, but somehow sacred. You blink once, slowly, and watch as the world rearranges itself in the faint light. Someone has left, or entered, or shifted in their sleep. It doesn't matter. The tavern absorbs all movement into stillness, the way snow absorbs sound. A man nearby adjusts his belt, groans softly, and then leans his head back against the wall with the resignation of someone who gave up seeking comfort and found it anyway. His breath is ragged but regular. You do not know his name, and you don't want to. Knowing names would mean remembering them, and remembering things implies they might be lost. Here, there is no loss, only drift. The dog, ever loyal to the floor and its cold, has moved closer to the hearth. You don't remember it getting up. You don't remember much at all, but that's becoming a kind of comfort. The lack of remembering makes room for simply noticing. You notice the way your own chest rises and falls, the way the tavern walls creak and settle, like old knees that still manage to climb stairs when asked. You notice that the mug near your elbow has a crack shaped like a crooked smile, that someone carved a heart into the underside of the table, as if love was something you had to hide but still needed close. These are the details that history forgets. But the tavern doesn't. It records them all in scent and scuff and silence. There is laughter now, faint, distant, not quite real. It flutters in like a bird too tired to stay airborne, then perches in the rafters above your head. A girl maybe, a boy, or neither, or both. The sound isn't youthful. It's older than that. The laughter of someone who has lived long enough to find absurdity in everything, even survival. You find yourself smiling. Your face, stiff from stillness, protests a little, but relents. It feels strange to move. Even stranger to realize that stillness has become your resting state, not just of body but of thought. Nothing presses forward anymore. No question demands an answer. You have become part of the pause. You imagine what the tavern looks like from outside, if there even is an outside anymore. Perhaps just a sagging roof, a crooked door, smoke curling from the chimney like the last thread of a dream. Maybe people walk past it every day without noticing. Maybe it only appears to those who've stopped looking. Maybe it's less a building and more a lull in the noise of the world. A pocket of gentle rot where nothing new begins, but nothing old quite dies. A place where you're not asked to be interesting or efficient or correct. Just present, just quiet, just here. You hear something heavy shift, a bench, maybe, or the memory of one, and then the soft thud of someone leaning into sleep. The whole tavern leans with them, ever so slightly, as if it too is weary. The candles burn lower, not because they must, but because they choose to. Their wax pools lazily, forming slow rivers that harden into fossils of flame. Time is so soft here, so slow, that you imagine if you reached into the wax your fingers might come back with memories not your own, of weddings held in secret, of bread too hard to chew, of boots drying near the fire after a storm no one remembers. And what about the tavern keeper? You haven't seen him in a while, or perhaps you have, and he's simply become one of the shadows that moves with familiarity rather than intention. You suspect he doesn't sleep, or eats only what others forget. You wonder if he ever leaves, or if he was born behind the bar, grown from the barrels and smoke and sighs. He speaks in nods now, in the scrape of a bowl, in the tap of a mug against the table. He is not lonely. He's not quite real. He's the soul of this place, worn smooth by repetition and reverence. You're grateful for him, though you'll never say so. Words don't carry well here. Your toes have gone numb, but not in an alarming way, more like the feeling of dissolving, the same way twilight eats colour from the sky, slowly, kindly, with a deep sigh. You wiggle them once just to see if they're still yours, and they are, but only barely. You stretch one leg, then the other, careful not to disturb the silence that now sits beside you like an old friend. You think about moving, then you don't. The thought is enough. Action would be unnecessary. The tavern holds you in such a way that even your intentions are gently taken from you and stored behind the bar, next to forgotten promises and half-finished songs. Outside, if such a thing exists, the world continues. Empires rise and fall. Wars begin for reasons no one will remember. People chase gold and glory and gods with new names. But none of that enters here. The tavern is not an escape from the world. It is a reminder that the world is much older, much slower, much quieter than we pretend. It moves in the rhythm of soup boiling, of boots drying, of fires smouldering down to nothing. And you, now a quiet ember yourself, burn low, soft, steady. And as your breathing matches the heartbeat of the tavern, you understand something final and profound. Not everything needs to be healed. Some things only need to be held, and you, in this hour, in this forgotten corner of an unnamed tavern, are held. There is no longer a clear boundary between your body and the bench beneath you. You're no longer sure where the wood ends and your bones begin. Perhaps they've agreed to blend, not out of necessity but out of mutual exhaustion. The bench, after all, has carried generations of weary backsides, and you, in turn, have carried generations of heavy thoughts. Now the two of you hold each other, wordlessly, with the intimacy of objects too tired to pretend they're separate. You shift slightly, but it feels like the bench shifts with you, like two old friends sighing in synchrony. A log in the fire cracks open with a tired hiss, and you imagine it's the tavern breathing. It's been breathing this way for hundreds of years, slow, patient, a deep inhale with every visitor who enters, a long exhale with every soul who dares to rest. You're part of that breath now, part of the rhythm of a building that doesn't need a heartbeat because it has yours. The floor, once cold, has warmed, not fully, not comfortably, but enough. Just enough that your boots no longer feel like cages, just enough that the tips of your toes remember they're alive. You curl them experimentally, feeling the stiffness like an old spell wearing off. No one notices, or maybe everyone notices and has learned not to speak of it. That's the custom here. Silence is the only shared language. It's not cruel, it's kind. A silence that accepts everything, that makes room for your smallest aches, your unfinished thoughts, your quiet unravelling. Even the dust respects the hush. It swirls, but it never dares to settle loudly. You watch a single particle dance in a beam of firelight, twirling like it's forgotten it was ever dirt. To your left, someone exhales through their nose, a sound halfway between a snore and a laugh. You don't look at them. You don't need to. That sound alone tells you everything. They are at ease, perhaps dreaming, perhaps only remembering how to feel safe. You offer a silent smile in their direction, one you don't expect to be seen, and that makes it better. Giving without recognition, caring without cause. It feels radical in a way that nothing outside these tavern walls ever does. There, in the world beyond, everything has a price. Here, comfort is shared freely, passed along in glances, in the warmth of nearby bodies, in the permission to simply exist without performance. You hear the wind press against the shuttered windows, soft but insistent. It does not knock to be let in. It only reminds you that it's there, that outside is still a place, that rain still falls, that somewhere mud is forming, somewhere roads are washing out, somewhere a farmer curses the sky while pulling his hood tighter, but not here. Here, the walls hold. The roof leans inward like a protector, slouched but steady. The wind is not a threat. It is a lullaby from the outside world telling you to stay inside a little longer, maybe forever. Your hands rest in your lap now. You've forgotten what they're for. They are not tools here, not instruments of labour or defence. They are simply hands, folded, relaxed, witnesses to the moment. You study the lines on your palms like an old map you no longer intend to follow. Each crease tells a story you don't need to finish. Each callus, a memory that no longer stings. The dirt under your nails is no longer shameful. It's a reminder that you've touched the earth, that you've climbed something, dug into something, survived something. The tavern does not ask you to be clean. It only asks that you be here, and you are. A low voice hums a tune from across the room. No words, just a melody so old it doesn't need a name. It loops, not neatly, but like a thread being woven into a blanket. You let it wrap around your shoulders, imaginary though it is, and you feel warmer anyway. Music here isn't for celebration, it's for stitching people back together, one hum at a time. You wonder who the voice belongs to. You don't care. It's not theirs anymore. It belongs to the tavern, to the night, to the hush that sits between breaths. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to listen more deeply. The fire groans. That's the only word for it. A soft, aged groan like a grandfather rising slowly from his favourite chair. It doesn't alarm you. Nothing here could. The fire has moods, and tonight it is contemplative. It flares now and then, not to perform, but to remind you it's alive, that it sees you, that even in this quiet you are witnessed. There's a comfort in that, in being seen without being judged, in knowing that you could weep openly or grin foolishly and the fire would crackle just the same. It has seen more than you ever will. It doesn't require explanations. You wonder how many others have sat where you sit now. Not exactly here, but close enough. How many hands have gripped this table, desperate or drunk or both? How many mouths have muttered prayers into their mugs, unsure if they were speaking to God or to ale? How many feet have dragged in muddy footprints that faded long before the memories they carried? The tavern remembers, not in words, in stains, in splinters, in smells that cling to the beams like ghost stories. You breathe in and smell sweat, bread, old wood, wet cloth, ash, and something sweet. Maybe spilled cider from 100 years ago. Maybe regret. Your breath slows, not because you're tired, though you are, but because the tavern teaches slowness like a religion. Fast things do not survive here. Fast minds burn out. Fast words fall flat. Fast hearts break. Here, the heartbeat of everything is slow, patient, enduring. You match it now, willingly. You feel your pulse settle, your shoulders drop, your eyes soften. Your thoughts, once loud, sharp, flailing, now drift like smoke toward the rafters. You do not follow them, you let them go. In the corner a candle dies. No drama, no flicker, just the quiet surrender of flame to wax. You watch the last of its light curl upward, then disappear. The room accepts the dimming without complaint. You do too. You realize you no longer fear the dark. Not here. Here, darkness is soft, a blanket, a balm, a place where the world gets quieter, not scarier, a place where things are allowed to rest. And so you rest too. You lean further back, deeper in, lower down, until the floor and your spine are no longer in disagreement, until the air and your lungs are the same, until the tavern no longer holds you, but becomes you. Somewhere in the folds of silence, the tavern sighs, not with sadness, but with the kind of deep, ancient contentment that only comes from being exactly what it is and nothing more. You don't hear it with your ears exactly. It's more like your bones notice first. A subtle shift in the air, a loosening of the invisible threads that have held you upright all this time. You sink lower, though you're not sure into what. It might be the bench, it might be yourself, it might be a dream you've entered so slowly that you didn't realize you were already inside it. Time, which once paced around the edges of your thoughts like a nervous dog, has finally wandered off for good. You imagine it curled up near the hearth, asleep beside the old dog with twitching paws and a belly full of borrowed stew. You do not miss it, you do not call it back. Without time, you're no longer late, no longer early, no longer anything, but here. The shadows in the tavern have become soft now. They've settled like old blankets over every beam, every crooked shelf, every tired face. You watch them shift lazily with the firelight, like they're deciding whether to stay the night or melt into the floorboards. You wonder if the shadows have names, if they remember the people they once belonged to. Perhaps that one beside the door used to follow a knight with a limp and a guilty heart. Maybe the one stretched across the ceiling came from a woman who sang only when she was alone. You don't ask. The tavern has taught you better than to disturb the quiet dignity of things that linger. Some truths are whispered only to the dust. Your fingers find a groove in the wood of the table, worn deep by someone who must have sat here often, pressing the same spot over and over as if trying to leave behind proof of their presence. You run your thumb across it slowly, not to erase it, but to honour it. This is the kind of history that never makes it into books. A quiet indentation, a small act repeated until it mattered, until it lasted. You think of all the people who've sat in this room and never spoken their full truth, who have offered only parts of themselves, a laugh, a shrug, a downcast gaze, and still left pieces behind. You realise you're doing the same now. Your breath is here, your silence is here. Your warmth, too, held briefly by the bench, the table, the air. When you leave, you will not be gone completely. Outside, the rain begins again. You hear it before you feel it, a gentle tapping, like a memory knocking on a closed door. Then the scent arrives, wet earth, soaked wood, the metallic bite of storm-soaked iron. The tavern inhales it all like an old smoker returning to a favourite pipe. It welcomes the weather not with dread but with recognition. Rain has visited before. Rain is family. You turn your head slightly toward the nearest shutter, just enough to hear the trickle of water racing down the outside wall. It is a slow race, and it doesn't care who wins. You listen to it for what could be minutes or hours. The difference has lost meaning. Someone stands, or maybe stirs. There is a faint shuffle of feet, the creak of a floorboard that you now know by name. You do not turn to look. You don't need to. Movement in the tavern is never dramatic. It's as gentle as a tide, as gradual as erosion. People rise not because they are ready, but because their rest has shifted shape. Maybe to fetch more stew, maybe to find the privy, maybe to step outside and forget to return. And that's how people leave here, quietly, like thoughts. You feel no need to follow. You shift your weight and feel the press of something small in your pocket. A coin, maybe, or a button long forgotten. You leave it there. Its presence doesn't bother you. It is a reminder that you came from somewhere else. That before this you lived a life that required currency and fastening and plans. But here, in this sacred slump of slowness, none of those things hold weight. The coin will not buy you comfort. The button will not secure your soul. You are undone, gloriously so. The fire, ever loyal, breathes low now. Its light is no longer bright enough to illuminate. It only reveals. The edges of things. The places where light gives up and shadow begins. You look around the room and see outlines, people, mugs, slumped shoulders, forgotten boots, but no details. It's as if the tavern has decided that too much clarity would be cruel, that softening the world is its final kindness. You close your eyes and nothing changes. The room stays with you. The warmth seeps in deeper. Even your dreams, when they arrive, will wear cloaks made of this moment. And in this stillness you begin to wonder how long the tavern has existed. Not in years, but in purpose. How long has it held those who had nowhere else to go? How long has it been a refuge for the unspoken? How many wars has it outlasted? How many kings has it ignored? You realize the tavern is not part of history. It is the thing history leans on when it gets tired. It is the quiet in between pages, the breath taken before the sword is drawn, the last good place before morning. A chair creaks beside you. No one sits in it. It simply settles, perhaps in sympathy, or memory. You find yourself moved by it. Not the sound itself, but the idea that even empty things long for weight. You reach out and touch its backrest gently. No reason, just to say, I see you. You have not been forgotten. The chair doesn't answer, but it doesn't need to. The exchange is complete. And then, something remarkable happens. You let go, not dramatically, not like in the stories, but slowly, like snow melting into river water, like the final note of a lullaby trailing off into sleep. You let go of your thoughts, of your posture, of your need to define what this moment is. You stop asking how long you've been here or what happens next. You stop caring. You stop needing to care. And in that release you find something resembling freedom. Not the loud, cinematic kind, but the quiet kind. The kind that curls up beside you like a dog near the fire and says simply, rest. You close your eyes, fully this time. The tavern does not disappear. It deepens. It settles around you like a second skin. You are not gone. You are only quieter. And as the rain taps, the fire hums, and the shadows breathe, you fall gently, finally into sleep. Sleep does not arrive with a trumpet, but with a whisper. You don't fall into it. You drift, like a leaf spiralling slowly into the surface of a still, dark pond. The tavern doesn't mind your slipping away. It's done this before. It knows how to cradle sleepers without waking them, how to hold them gently in the seams between now and not quite. Your breath has slowed to a pace you didn't know you were capable of. Each inhale feels older than you. Each exhale erases another little weight you didn't know you were carrying. The tavern responds in kind. The fire eases its rhythm. The floorboards stop complaining. The shadows hush each other with gestures you can't see but somehow feel. This place does not just accommodate rest. It encourages it. It teaches it. It becomes it. And somewhere in this fog of slowness a memory rises, not sharp or urgent, just a quiet shape. A child, perhaps, watching raindrops race down a window pane, or an old man lifting a spoon to his lips, hands trembling from stories too long carried, or a woman, hooded and hunched, kneeling to tie a child's shoe before she disappears into a crowd. The memory doesn't belong to you, or maybe it does. Here, in the tavern, memory is communal. It leaks from the walls, it seeps through the floor. You do not need to own a moment to feel its ache. It's all part of the air now, gently shared between sleepers. The dog stirs, not dramatically, just a flick of the ear, a rearranging of limbs. He shifts into a new shape, closer to the warmth, closer to you. He doesn't open his eyes. He doesn't need to. He knows where the comfort lives. He knows the fire won't go out. He knows the people around him are kind, even if they never speak. That's the magic of this place. You don't have to prove anything. Not your goodness, not your usefulness, not your pain. You can simply be. And being, as it turns out, is enough. In the far corner there's a chair with a cloak draped over it. No one remembers who left it there. Maybe someone who came in from the rain and never left. Maybe someone who will come back centuries from now to find it exactly where they left it. The cloak is heavy, woolen, and smells faintly of rosemary and damp moss. You've never worn it, but somehow you know exactly how it would feel on your shoulders. Warm but not comforting. Like a father who never said much but always made sure the door was locked at night. You imagine yourself in that cloak. You imagine yourself rising from this bench, walking to the chair, slipping it on, and stepping out into the rain like a ghost who's finally ready to go home. But you don't move. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The thought is enough. The rain taps more insistently now, tracing new paths across the shingles. You wonder how long the roof has held, how many storms it's shrugged off, how many winters it's survived with only straw and prayer to keep out the cold. It creaks occasionally, like a weary guardian, but it holds. That's what matters. You trust it, and that trust is its own kind of shelter. The walls, though crooked, have never once tried to fall in. The floor, though sagging, always finds a way to support your weight. This place isn't perfect, but it's honest, and honesty is warmer than any fire. Across the room, someone begins to mumble in their sleep. The words are thick with dream, unfinished sentences, hints of another world. You listen, not to understand, but to remember what language sounds like when it's not trying to impress. Just sound and breath, shaped by sleep. It reminds you of lullabies hummed in the dark, of stories half told because no one had the strength to finish them, of promises whispered into hair, not to be believed, but to be felt. The mumbling fades, and silence returns, softer now, as if even it has learned to speak more gently. You shift your weight again, though it takes great effort. Your body has become heavy, like stone in a riverbed. But it's a good weight, a grounding one. You're not stuck, you are rooted. And roots do not apologize for their stillness. They simply hold. You imagine your legs reaching into the earth, weaving through clay and bone and old coins forgotten by history. You imagine your breath feeding the rafters, your heart sinking with the creaks of timber. You're not a guest anymore, you are part of the structure. A faint smell of onions rises from the kitchen, sweet, overcooked, the kind that sticks to hair and stories alike. It reminds you of feasts held not for celebration but for survival, of people gathered not because they liked each other, but because winter demanded it. You wonder if someone back there is still chopping, or maybe the smell is old, baked into the stones. Either way, it comforts you. It says, we fed each other here. We shared what we had. We made the small things sacred, even soup. And now you notice something strange. The tavern no longer feels entirely physical. It pulses with something else, a memory maybe, or a prayer. You feel it in your fingertips, a slight vibration. Not unpleasant, like the echo of a bell that hasn't been struck in years. You wonder if this place is real, if it ever was. But the question melts before it finishes forming. Real or not, it has held you. That is enough. You let your head tilt. Just slightly. Just enough to let gravity finish what your thoughts began. Your eyes are closed now, but you can still see. Not with vision, with presence. You see the fire without looking. You feel the dog breathing. You remember the way the cloak would feel even though it's never touched your skin. This is not dreaming. This is remembering things that never happened, and it is the most restful state of all. And then, with no sound, no ceremony, no need, you begin to disappear. Not in a tragic way, not in a dramatic puff of smoke, just a slow erosion of edges. Your name loosens, your worries fade, even your shape becomes optional. You're not gone, you're simply dissolved, into the air, into the smell of onion and ash, into the low groan of the fire, into the warm, worn wood of the bench that no longer holds you, because you are now part of it. And still, the tavern holds on, because it remembers everyone, even you. By now, the tavern barely remembers what time it is, or even if time still exists at all. The shadows stretch and coil lazily across the floor like cats that have forgotten how to be wild. The fire, once lively, now glows with a dim golden confidence of something that knows its worth even as it fades. You're still here, though you no longer feels like a fixed point. You're more of a presence now, like warmth, like hush, like the quiet curve of a half-forgotten thought. You sit, or maybe you hover, or maybe you're just breath in the wood, pulse in the walls. You're not asleep, not fully. But you're no longer awake in the way that matters. The hard outlines of the world, names, tasks, roles, have all melted. What's left is soft, kind, beautiful in a way you don't need to explain, and the tavern, gentle as ever, accepts this version of you without question. The dog is still curled near the hearth, legs twitching faintly in a dream chase. You don't need to know what he's chasing. Maybe it's a rabbit. Maybe it's the sound of your laughter when you first entered. Maybe it's nothing, but even nothing has meaning here. You feel a fondness for him so deep it surprises you, not the fondness of ownership or even companionship, but of shared silence, of two creatures who have suffered different storms and found the same shelter. The kind of bond that never gets written into stories because it's too quiet to notice, too real to describe. A distant creak suggests someone has stood up again, or sat down, or leaned just a little further into the wood. You do not look. You no longer chase sounds with your eyes. You let them drift toward you like smoke, interpret themselves, settle into your skin if they wish. The tavern is alive with these small shifts, not loud, not demanding, but constant. It's a living thing, not in the way cities breathe or forests pulse, but in the way a grandmother's hands are alive, worn, warm, holding memories they'll never speak aloud. The walls here have seen too much to waste time telling you what they know. They simply offer it to you, unspoken, if you're willing to feel it. You glance toward the heavy wooden beams overhead, the ones that sag slightly in the middle, burdened by centuries of holding up other people's dreams. You wonder if they creak more on nights like this, when everything is too still. But they don't. They rest too. They've earned it. You notice, with a kind of tender awe, how nothing in the tavern rushes, not the fire, not the people, not even the dust. Time is not kept here. It is allowed. And you too are allowed to take up space, to not know what comes next, to not be brilliant or brave or even interesting. You're enough, exactly as this, a slow breath wrapped in fabric, half human, half moment. And then you hear it, a cup placed gently on a wooden table, just a soft clink, like a punctuation mark in a sentence that has no urgency. You picture it, the curve of the handle, the steam rising in lazy spirals, the pale liquid inside catching what's left of the firelight. You imagine someone lifting it, both hands around the warmth, not to drink, but just to feel the heat. That's what comfort looks like here. Not consumption, but presence. You don't need to fill yourself. You need only to notice that you're already full. Somewhere in the back, behind the counter where no one ever rushes, there's a shelf filled with bottles. Green, brown, cloudy with dust and mystery. You imagine what's inside them. Herbs, maybe. Roots. The last honey from a forgotten summer, or just water that remembers being wine. You imagine the tavern keeper, whoever they were or are, placing each one gently like a secret kept not for profit, but for peace. There are no labels. There's no need. Things here are not explained. They are understood. Or not. And either is fine. A draught moves through the room, sudden but not rude. It brushes your ankle, your sleeve, the edge of your thoughts. It reminds you that there is still an outside, that weather continues, that somewhere a crow lifts into the wind, but inside the air closes behind it like a door politely shut. The tavern does not try to keep the world out. It just makes you forget that it's waiting. You let your head rest fully now, against wood, against thought, against the night. Your eyelids are no longer heavy. They've become part of the darkness itself. You do not close them. They vanish. Your breath softens to the point of invisibility, and still, the tavern holds you. Like a story that has no plot but still deserves to be told. Like a song hummed with no words, no chorus, only care. And suddenly it occurs to you, this place has never really needed people. Not in the way cities do, or temples, or armies. The tavern exists for the moments between people, the pauses, the quiet gestures, the sigh before the confession, the shared silence after the joke. The hand passed over a mug without comment. You feel the weight of that truth settle into your chest, not like a burden, but like a blanket. You're not the hero here. There is no hero here, just echoes, just warmth, just small human things done gently. One of the candles sputters, not out, just low. His wax has made a small pool, warm and useless and lovely. You imagine dipping a finger into it, not to leave a mark, just to feel something slowly harden around you and know that even that can be safe. The flame holds on a little longer, not for duty but because it chooses to, because being a small light in a room that's already resting is still worth something, and so you remain. Not because you must, not because there's nowhere else to go, but because here, in this quiet, sagging, absurd, perfect little tavern, you've remembered something the world made you forget. That it's okay to be tired, that it's okay to stop, that it's okay to want nothing more than warmth and stillness and a place where your breath doesn't echo back as a question. You exhale and the tavern exhales with you, one breath, one being, and you sleep, though sleep no longer feels like a different state. It feels like arriving, like being seen, like being held. And now, as the last embers hum beneath a blanket of soft ash, and the shadows curl into themselves like cats retreating into dreams, the tavern reaches its most sacred hour, the hour where everything stops trying. You're still here, though the edges of yourself have gone feather soft. You can no longer tell where your breath ends and the room begins, and it does not matter. The bench beneath you is no longer just a piece of furniture. It has become part of your body, or perhaps you've become part of it. The tavern has folded you into its ancient, quiet heart, the way earth folds in a fallen leaf, not with greed or hunger, but with reverence. You have been witnessed, you have been accepted, you have been allowed to stop. Outside, the wind makes one final pass through the thatched roof, not as a storm, but as a memory. It sighs through the eaves with the voice of 1,000 years, brushing past your skin like a grandmother's hand, cool and trembling. It doesn't ask you to remember anything specific, just to feel the weight of all that came before you, and all that will continue after. The trees beyond the walls do not stir. They, too, are part of this hush. You can almost hear their roots whispering to one another beneath the soil, trading secrets with the worms and the forgotten bones of animals that once drank from this very tavern's doorstep. Nothing is ever truly lost here. It all just changes shape. The dog lets out a breath that sounds like surrender. It is the sound of a life lived without needing to impress, of comfort earned one crumb at a time. His belly rises and falls like a tide that asks for nothing more than stillness. You wonder if he dreams of you now, the way you dreamed of being someone else, or perhaps he dreams of a time when people didn't rush so much, when sleep was an act of belonging. You feel a flicker of kinship with him. Two souls at rest, not because the world is easy, but because the struggle can be paused, just for now. The other sleepers in the room, the woman in the far corner, the couple slumped shoulder to shoulder, the old man with his fingers curled gently around an empty cup. They are all breathing the same slow rhythm. None of you speak. None of you need to. The tavern has replaced words with warmth. It has taught you a new kind of language, one made of glances not given, of silence not broken, of nearness without demand. In this stillness, you understand more than you ever did in noise. You understand that life does not require you to chase it. Sometimes it finds you. Sometimes it sits beside you on a cracked wooden bench and says nothing at all.